by Supervisor Miller.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Board of Supervisors. On this first day of summer, it's good to remember maybe the crew of the Titan lost at sea, but also all of those lost at sea emotionally or spiritually or perhaps in need of guidance. Pray with me, please. O God, the fountain of wisdom, whose will is good and gracious, and whose law is truth, we beseech you to guide and bless our supervisors, that they may enact such laws and regulations as shall please you. We are not the first to decide upon matters. Conflict, disagreements are not new in our time. Guide us as we seek your perfect way, your righteous judgments. Then reassure us that your faithfulness endures throughout time. Cause us once again to remember that you call us to give you our whole heart, our mind, and our body, to believe that our days past, present, and future are all in your blessing. And then may we be not inclined to lean on our own understanding in these days or ever, but to trust only in you. For it is you, O Lord, who are good, and your love for us is eternal. To the glory of your name and the welfare of this people, in Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll call the meeting to order. And Supervisor Goodman, is he on the telephone?
Yes, Supervisor Goodman.
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Thank you.
Okay, first up is going to be call to the public. And I know that a lot of people want to speak on item number H, so I'm going to do something with the consent agenda. We're going to have regular call to the public in a bit. But with item number H, I'm going to pull it ahead of time before we even get to the consent agenda, and I'm going to put it right after, during item number 2, so that anybody that wants to speak on item number H can then speak on item number 2, and everybody will get their say. So right now we have the regular call to the public, and I have Michael Goldstein.
Chairman, if I can just clarify the announcement. So for item number 2, the public cannot speak on item number 2. So following item number 2, we're going to go to consent agenda item number H, and then the public can speak on the consent agenda item number H.
Right, which is the GPS.
That is correct.
Item. Yes. Okay, thank you. And whoever comes to call to public, please give us your general address of where you are from. Call to the publics have 3 minutes, and watch the colors there. When you get yellow, you get a warning, and red, you got to wrap it up.
Thank you. Chairman Surtee, honorable members of the Board of Supervisors. My name is Michael Goldstein, resident of Ancantera at Queen Creek. I'm also here on behalf of one of my organizations. I'm the Director of Government Affairs and Strategic Alliances for E-Generation Foundation, formerly known as Energy from Thorium Foundation. And we promote, as a nonprofit, charitable organization, the adoption of the Advanced Nuclear Energy Generation 4 liquid core molten salt nuclear reactors, which we determine can produce energy at half the cost of coal and about 3% of what it costs for wind and solar. So I noticed that on your agenda, item 11 is a work session to discuss what would be incorporated in the plan, the energy plan for the county. And I want to explain just a little bit about this and hope that it can be placed in so I can give further information to the board at a later date. Now, this is cheap, safe, abundant energy, not just for electricity, but it creates energy. It creates only two things: nuclear medical isotopes and a lot of heat, about 2.5 times the heat of a regular nuclear reactor, and it can be used for a lot of things. In one of my slides that I included here, it just lists the sort of things it can do for us on the last page. And it's a very important source. It's American technology created at Oak Ridge National Laboratory in the 1950s, never commercialized, and it's very important, and it can be the savior of all of us in terms of energy. I know we need more electricity here, but we need more of all sorts of things for industry, and this will help us. So I'd like to give my full presentation to the board at some time in the near future, and where I'll be able to explain it all and take questions and explain exactly why it's so safe and so cheap and that the energy will be so abundant. And I'm still on yellow.
Okay.
I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've learned that when you testify, if you go over 5 minutes, no matter how much time you have, people stop listening anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I think Mr. Miller and I might agree on this, that we should have Dr. Goldstein back for an extended presentation, if you could direct that.
We could bring that up on the item for future agenda items then. The Honorable Tara Walter.
Good morning, Supervisors. How are you this evening? My name is Tara Walter. I serve as the Mayor of Florence, Arizona. I am here today to express gratitude for your participation with the ADOT board. They came into town last week, and it's always important when we come together and we work together to benefit our communities. ADOT expressed that we had the largest turnout of our elected officials from local, county, up to our representatives at the state level. So for that, I am thankful. We have a lot of plans ahead of us, and I'm looking forward to seeing these plans brought to action. In addition, I wanted to extend an invitation. Our town council has recently revitalized our Florence Town Council. We meet every second Wednesday at 6 p.m. I know the future of our youth is important to you as it is to myself. In August, we will be attending the Arizona League of Cities and Towns, and I understand you will be as well. So if you would like to come and meet our youth ahead of time, they will be carrying our flag, and I know we're just one of the many municipalities that you represent, but your experience and influence is also appreciated for the benefit of our youth. With that, thank you.
Thank you. Belinda Rodriguez.
Good morning. My name is Belinda Rodriguez, and I'm the chair for Pinal County Republican Committee, and I live in the Gold Canyon area. Chairman, Vice Chairman, Supervisors Kavanaugh, Miller, and Goodman. It was brought to our attention yesterday during a meeting with the Elections Department Director that she plans to discontinue the GPS contract for the Pinal County elections. This system was used for tracking the ballot boxes and cages containing both marked and unmarked ballots. This gave voters reassurance that our ballots were not being redirected or diverted to any location other than to the precincts and back to the Elections Department. We were also informed that it would be on today's agenda for the Board of Supervisors to approve canceling the GPS contract. We were told that the GPS was not adequate and that the cost of $30,000 was too much. $30,000. That's a mere drop in the bucket in comparison to other frivolous expenses or salaries of 4 to 5 times that amount paid to individuals that don't have the necessary experience, knowledge, and skills. No offense, but degrees don't always come with common sense. We expressed our concerns and asked that the GPS contract not be canceled and to remove it from the agenda. The director should have notified or requested input before deciding to cancel the GPS contract. There's no alternate replacement strategy at this time. If this system is not meeting our needs, then we should work with the existing vendor to modify and correct the issues. It will be much easier to work with a vendor who is familiar with the existing issues than to start all over with a new vendor. The tubs, buckets, and cages for used and unused ballots must be equipped with GPS tracking devices during our elections. Why are we taking a step backwards? At a time when the county should be providing processes and systems to give more reassurance to our voters that the integrity of our elections is not compromised, we want to take out a system that provided voters a fraction of reassurance. Yes, you have withdrawn the item from the agenda today, but what's to reassure us that it won't be hidden in the next agenda for next week or next month? With no disrespect to the current elections director, I'm sure that she was a great attorney in both Maricopa and Pinal County. However, I have some reservations that her knowledge and skills can lead us to a successful election without its integrity being compromised or challenged. I'm concerned that we are heading towards another botched elections. You have individuals in the county who have experience in elections. At the very least, they should be working together, joined at the hip in discussing or making decisions for the processes and systems used. We can't afford another botched election. You, the board of directors, can't afford it. The people were asking for your resignations the last time. I think they will demand it if we have another botched election.
Thank you. Jack Mattashoni.
Jack Mattashoni, Apache Junction area, also a precinct captain, 58. I'm here basically, and I just endorse what Belinda just said. I actually was in the same meeting. However, there's a couple things that I want to mention that she may not have mentioned, but there's no cameras in this facility other than 2 places. And I've been hearing, or my investigation has shown that they've been asked for before and nobody's put them in there. And with all this stuff going on in the elections, I really, really think we need to take a look at making sure those things are safe and we observe who's in there and make sure there's no funny business going on. So that's just one of the points. The other point is that, I really like how you guys are dressed right now. You got your shirts on, you got your casual business. County manager looks like he respects his appearance. But what I experienced yesterday at that meeting, which I don't understand, I came from a long line of upper management. I used to brief 4-star, 3-star generals in the military when I was in the military. And you know what? Nobody showed up with protest shirts on saying Biden fight fascism across the seat from me when, of course, that's an offensive statement. Because I didn't vote for the Biden administration. I voted for Trump. So, when you sit there with a shirt like that and trying to have a bipartisan meeting to improve your elections doesn't help do that. I didn't think that was appropriate. I think we should have management. I was in management. I said, hey, you don't show up like that. You show up in non-offensive gear, and we try to make things better. And that's something that I don't think you guys are aware of. It gives the county a very bad image to have people like myself and other people show up and allow people to have shirts and T-shirts on in a meeting set for improving the system. So I think management's very important. Whoever, I assume the county manager should give some direction as far as how to make these type of meetings impartial, because they're bipartisan, because a lot of Republicans don't like Democrats and vice versa. I could show up at the next meeting wearing my shirts or my Let's Go Brandon flag, and let's talk about make things better. it's not going to happen because you're going to have everybody mad and upset and offensive. So those are just some things I think need to be considered as far as how we manage things and have an image for this county. I think you might agree that that's probably important. You all got my email. I think I don't need to say anything else other than just read the email. I'm open. You got my phone number, my email. I'm more than happy to answer questions. And don't get me wrong. I love you guys. I love the county. I like the county manager. Okay? Take care.
Would anyone else like to speak on anything other than item number H?
Good morning. I'm Noel Reck from Casa Grande. A lot has happened since the last meeting. There was the Trump indictment and his self-incrimination appearance on Fox, along with this statement from Kari Lake, quote, "If you want to get to President Trump, you're going to have to get through me and 75 million Americans just like me. Most of us are card-carrying members of the NRA. That's not a threat. That's a public service announcement," unquote. 11 extremist House Republicans, including Crane and Biggs, went to war with their own party, their tantrums over the debt limit agreement, bringing House action to a halt. House Republicans now say negotiated debt limit numbers are just caps and can be underspent if they so choose. Get ready to lose some money. Arizona Republicans continued beating the dead horses of election hand counts and drag shows. Governor Hobbs has now vetoed 143 bills that Republicans knew wouldn't get past her, a complete waste of time and money. Lastly, they botched the housing measure and the Maricopa Transportation Tax Plan, and now they're trying a backdoor maneuver to further limit the initiative process. There were good things that happened as well. The White House opened the website invest.gov, highlighting 32,000 infrastructure projects worth $470 billion. An interactive map shows projects state by state. Prices continued to drop, and the Fed didn't increase interest rates. There were Father's Day celebrations, Juneteenth celebrations, the first day of summer today, triple digits, and that much closer to fall. And a grand celebration of a team working together to achieve a championship. From my hometown, the Denver Nuggets, shout out. Working together as one, and we need more of that. But my primary focus today is on two recent news articles focused on opioid addiction and fentanyl, something discussed at length in these chambers, particularly regarding interdiction. They left me wondering how they might apply to the overall efforts to deal with addiction here in Pinal County. I'd made copies of both. The first details a successful harm reduction model utilized by the City of Baltimore and Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, serving 900 patients a year. The key elements are providing life-saving services to users without requiring abstinence, keeping people alive first and foremost as they confront the challenges associated with recovery, allowing for a spectrum of treatment from cessation to safer usage, reducing the stigma of the disease, it's not a moral failing, and utilizing Suboxone in a manner similar to methadone. However, another article details that only 2/3 of adult rehab centers and 1/4 of teen residential treatment centers provide Suboxone, considered standard care and the only medication approved for teens 16 and older with opioid use disorder. Questions raised leads me to join Roberto Rovelas in calling for an audit of Pinal County agencies involved to evaluate the scope and cost of programs designed to interdict drugs and treat addiction, to determine the most effective methods and funding to deal with the scourge. The gentleman soon to run for sheriff as a Democrat has indicated he is open to such an audit. Is the county. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I want to speak on that last, on the GPS.
Your name and where you're from.
My name is Earl Dorham, District 2 Chair for PCRC. I'm out of Vincentera. So I was in the meeting yesterday also, and Geraldine Roll did say after we talked to her that she would withdraw her request to cancel that contract until she's looked at other options. Things simple. There are a lot of trackers that are inexpensive that can be utilized without a lot of cost, but the security of those ballots coming from the precincts to the election headquarters is important. You need to be able to track those. One of the concerns was that the ballot boxes won't take that big GPS lock. Okay, so the ballot boxes, they have a you have a master lock on the back and you got a seal on the front. They need to have seals on both sides. And if they find a small, which is easy, air tags, anything, but that should already be in that box. They should be sealed before we get them, and they should come to the unit or to the precinct and go back, and you should know where they're at the entire time. Well, I also had a good talk with Chris Walshin. He's a senior VP for ES&S. I didn't talk about the voting machines last time, but after talking with him, and I have that background to understand what he's talking about, they've had those tested by a lot of labs. He explained everything I asked. I'm confident with those machines. And one of the things they can do, they can add watermarks, serial numbers, or QR codes that will give you your particular ballot. You can go back and check it, and you know that it was counted and that your vote was counted correctly. And I think that cost is like 27 cents a ballot. That might not be bad. Got another minute. This is, and I'll loan it to anyone you guys want to look at. It's from the United States Army War College. It's from 2004. It talks about the Chinese and how good their hacking team was back in 2004. And if you think they haven't gotten better since, you're wrong. And when you're looking at elections, key places like Maricopa County, we're stuck with that, right, until that gets cleaned up. But our county's important. We need to do business right here. So I'd appreciate it if you at least looked at those options for the ballots for security. And again, I just wanted to say, after talking to this guy extensively yesterday and looking up the things that he gave me, the labs like Bulletproof, Idaho National Labs, Rochester Institute of Technology, and they all go with the NIST standards. National. Well, I'm done with my time. But anyway, that's all I wanted to give you.
Anyone else like to speak on general items? Okay, I'll then close the public. Call to the public. Which brings us up to item number 2. Discussion and updates on election department operations, training, preparations for upcoming elections.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Geraldine Roll, Elections Director. I think as Mr. Dorr probably just told you, we are currently undergoing an on-site installation of the certified ES&S upgrade to our election management system. It involves a soft grade upware to the express vote ballot marking machines, the tabulators, and the computers used to create and build the elections and ballot. The upgrade will take the entire suite from a Windows 7 platform to a Windows 10 platform. The project did start yesterday. The Chief Information Security Officer from ES&S was on site, and the installation is on site. To answer any questions, we did have a number of folks that were present and were able to put whatever their concerns or questions were to him. At the conclusion of the installation, we will be performing a hash verification to ensure that what was loaded onto our machines is what was certified by the EAC and the state. We are continuing to evaluate the services and goods that were brought on board during the previous election, to ensure that our needs are met, and we will continue to bring any of those that need to be addressed by you to you. The Election Officials of Arizona Association held their annual conference the first week in June. We had 6 staff attend this training opportunity. The topics covered included cybersecurity, election management, chain of custody procedures, and others. The following week, which was I think last week, the Secretary of State offered the election official certification training. That was a combination of in-person and online training. I think there were 16 or 17 online modules that you had to complete, and then you had an online test to take. 8 of the election staff members attended that training. All have completed the online modules and all have passed the online test. Secretary of State broke this into two pieces, so we're not certified just because we've completed this piece. There's a second piece in September, and I believe that will be a 2-day recertification. I think they're doing that so that we will have the most recent updates in election law covered, as well as some additional topics. We had an event at CAC this last weekend. It was the poll pad event. So we rolled out 40 or 50 poll pads. We set half of them up and left the other half in the box, and had people come in and put them together, assemble them, and put them back in the box, and then they had an opportunity to go over and use a poll pad that was set up to see that it scanned driver's licenses, which it successfully did, and they had an opportunity to use the search these. They had an opportunity to use the. So sorry. They had an opportunity to use the search features, figure out how to talk to the poll pad. So we discovered some interesting things. If you had an apostrophe in your name, you might not find it under O apostrophe M, but you might find it under O space M. So just some tricks to using the poll pad. It was a successful event, and I think we have a short video. Yeah.
Welcome to the Central Arizona College, the Santan Valley campus, to our poll pad event. We thought that this would be a good opportunity for folks who have worked with the poll pads but haven't had a great opportunity to have a lot of hands-on. So we want to give them that opportunity, and to have just the public who may have some questions about it. So the poll pad is nothing more than an iPad, which probably most everybody is familiar with. You pull out the iPad, you connect it, plug in the printer, slide on the little tray that holds the driver's license, and you're really pretty much ready to go. A poll pad is an electronic poll roster, so it replaces the paper roster that you used to see at the precinct and polling places on election day. It is not a voting device. All it does is have a digital record of all the voters who are registered in the state. They are set up for the precincts that they are going to on election day. So the voters go in, they can scan their driver's license, and it brings up the fact that they're registered, whether they're an early voter, whether they've already voted, or whether they haven't voted at all. You can sign them in, they get a ticket, and they can go over and get a ballot that they can vote. So in a paper roster, they were large. If you ever voted in the precincts, at a precinct with a paper roster, they were thick, they were big pieces of paper. And so you walked in, you told the clerk or the poll worker what your name was, and they had to shift through those papers and find you, and then they would turn it around and have you sign it. This theoretically, when your license scans, you pop up fairly instantly. No shuffling through paper. I think the public, by and large, is curious about anything elections. I think that they have sincere questions and concerns and interest in all things elections. And so this is just another device that we're using. An ID clerk cannot go in and change anybody's records. You do not vote on the poll pad. It's simply an electric paper roster.
And last but not least, we have paused the manual tabulation exercise that we were undertaking so that we could take some time to develop and agree upon practices with the state and our fellow Arizona counties on how to perform this exercise. And with that, that concludes my report.
Any questions for Jerry?
I do.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your presentation. In the media not long ago, our communications department said that we're looking forward and not looking back. When a plane crashes, and we've crashed a couple of elections, the NTSB starts from the point of the crash and works their way backwards to examine absolutely every little thing. And I understand that we wouldn't give information or an interview and so on. So I'm really interested in looking back and really making sure we don't commit the same errors that we did previously. And so talking about the GPS tracking, how detailed are those? Can those track a cage of votes from the precinct in the car right to the room where they're stored?
I believe we're going to discuss that when we pull item H, which is going to
Okay.
be right after she concludes.
Okay, so then I'll not cover the GPS, but in the general election, did ES&S come and in response to any inquiry?
Yes, they did.
Okay, and what was that inquiry about?
So ES&S was on site election night.
Okay,
ES&S was on site. On site as we started to undergo the recount.
okay, and they were not on site during the general election?
They were on site during the general.
Okay,
So there was an ES&S representative sitting out in the front lobby.
okay. And were they able to handle everything, or were there any issues elevated to other people inside ES&S?
We had, I think it was machine C or machine 3. We took it down for about an hour while we waited for a technician from Tucson to come up because it was not feeding properly, it was jamming.
Okay. And that caused the counts to be off in terms of the number of ballots ran through. Tell me about that.
I don't know that I can actually point to, machine 3 did, when we did the recount, did have some precincts that had ballots that were not counted. I don't know that it can tie exactly into the jams that they were encountering.
Okay. And did machine 1 have any problems?
Not in terms of operations, but there were undercounts on all 3 machines.
Okay. And I've heard, basic from you and from other people, some of the errors that occurred. Are you willing to sit down with anybody who wants to go through these problems and make sure that they're absolutely certain that nothing nefarious occurred, that they're clear on the machine errors or human errors or anything that happened? Are you're willing to do that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Excuse me, just to be clear, and you mentioned undercounts in all 3 machines, but all these, we're talking pretty small numbers, but also they were all accounted for in the recount.
Yes.
Thank you.
Steve. Mr. Goodman, do you have any questions?
Yes. With the email that we got from Belinda Rodriguez, there was some discussion centered around the exercise that you had this was about a week or 2 ago. Can you address that and talk to that a little bit, because that's a lot of concerning to me.
You broke up, so I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Well, you did some exercise in hand counts or something like that a week or 2 ago, correct?
Correct.
Okay, could you address some of the concerns that Belinda brought up, please?
I don't know what concerns she raised.
She
Mr. Goodman.
just read the letter in the public right there.
Mike, I don't believe she's seen that. I think it was the possibly in regards to not everyone having ample time to be prepared for this, and it was kind of short notice. I think those are some of the concerns.
I can tell you that we didn't get any further with this exercise than we're still trying to develop a tool to accurately and speedily manually tabulate ballots. This was an exercise. We were still testing forms.
And are we going to do that trial run again?
I would. I think that I think that there's great value and merit in having a more input into that exercise, what the methodology should be, and I think it would also have value to have the Secretary of State know what we're doing and undertaking.
As you say, it has the Secretary of State, but also the different counties are doing it different ways, and to have everybody on the same, essentially the same paragraph, not even the same page, to be doing the same thing so that the results are similar in all counties rather than all over the board.
Correct.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay, Mike, did that satisfy some of your question?
Yeah, it did, and I think we'll talk more about it when letter H, or even at the end when future items. So thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Well, I think, go ahead.
I have one more question.
Yes.
I've talked to you in your office, and I'm glad that you're doing the nuts and bolts procedures manual. That was my concern in 2021 when we made a couple of small errors in small elections. We realized that there's no nuts and bolts, turn on the lights manual, and how to move an election through the department, because it was all head knowledge, and only a start of a manual had been written. So I'm glad you're doing that. But going back to the general, in the procedures, it's my understanding and my recollection that you said no, I think you said the statutorily required audit wasn't done after the count. Is that right?
That's right.
And so you've been placed in the position, you advised the Elections Department for numbers of years. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. So you know what procedure should be in place moving forward. And who besides Virginia Ross knew that the audit hadn't been completed as required by law?
Virginia. I'm sure that the staff didn't. You know who we had in the Elections Department. Not many of them had any elections experience. They would not have known what steps should be taken.
So once the counts are they printed out from the machine, and then the canvas is generated from that, or the counts? Could you go over that procedure real quick for the benefit of the folks here?
Sure. There's a number of reports that get printed out of electionware. It's the statement of votes cast by precincts. So that is the report that in the canvas, the thick part of the canvas, which shows all of the ballots that were cast or tallied by the machines for the various candidates in questions. There's a voter registration statistics, which I think comes from the recorder's office, and voter turnout statistics.
Okay, and so in the general election, those reports were created, and the next thing to do would have been to call the audit team, which consists of either volunteers or employees, to do a hand count of 2%, if I recall correctly. Is that right?
You begin the hand count of 2% the day after the election.
Okay, but so the audit was missing. So what should have occurred during that audit?
If the poll pads had been working and we had confidence in the numbers that it was reporting, we should have been able to take the number of individuals who checked in at the polls and compare it to the number on the statement of votes cast in that particular precinct or any precinct, and they should be pretty darn close, because the number of votes of people that checked in on a poll pad should be the number of people who got a ballot and went and voted it and put it into a ballot box. So that comparison was not done. You also have your beginning inventory of ballots, the number of ballots that were returned, so we know what number of ballots were used, minus any that were spoiled or those that were voted provisionally. The provisional process was challenging for everyone, and we did not have a good number of provisional voters. We couldn't really ascertain that from the official ballot reports. So those comparisons weren't done. But if you go through those exercises, if there is a problem, it's likely to be red flagged in that process.
And we have the poll books where a voter has their identifying information, and we had the poll pads in the general election, right?
They had signature rosters, yes.
Okay. So if we only had the signature rosters and not the poll pads, and someone who is not in the signature roster wanted to vote, they would cast a provisional. Is that right?
That's right.
And so why do we need the poll pads?
As I think I've said to you, if they don't perform with excellence, I'm not sure why we would need the poll pads.
Okay. And you and I have had these conversations, but for the benefit of the public, they need to know that we're working on these things.
They are a good tool. I mean, admittedly, it's a good tool if they are used properly and if they are working properly. And it's a quick tool because on election night, as soon as those polls close, you can pull up ePulse, which is where all of that data is going into, and you can, while you're sitting in the warehouse as the ballot boxes come back, look at the number of check-ins instantly and look at the official ballot report and see if these guys are jiving. Are they reporting 300 ballots cast, and are they showing 300 voters being checked in? So it's the first little step in the audit, but it can start happening right at that point.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this might be a good time for me to interject something here. Any conversation that our director has with any member of the board, I would like to request that she does a complete copy of what's discussed, questions that are asked to all of us, all the board members, so that we know. And I mean, we're not always going to have the same information or the same questions when it comes to that. So Miller might have a great question that I didn't think of. And I think it's imperative that we get the same information that's being given to one supervisor be given to everybody.
Natasha, that would not violate open meeting law, would it?
Chairman, no, that would just be general information that the Board of Supervisors is being provided.
Okay.
And I would just request that if that information come through me, so that way that I have it on file for the record.
Okay.
Understood.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
If that concludes item number 2 for you,
It does.
so this is where I have now moved item number H about the GPS from the consent agenda. This is not precedented in my couple years up here. So we will now do item number H. And Jerry, do you want to present that? And then we will then have anyone who wants to speak on that from the public can then speak on it.
Certainly. I want to terminate the contract with Fleet Up. This contract was not procured through procurement. It is in excess of the value that should have gone through, that would need to go through procurement. And I believe it was done hastily. The reason I want to terminate it is that this is not a tracking device that meets the election department needs. It is a large device, and it slides through and it locks the cage and it stays on the cage. And so the information that it gave us was when the cages were picked up and delivered to the precincts, the polling places, we could look at the geofencing and we could see where they were and as they were going there. The disappointment was on election night, because they're on the cages, and many of the cages are not returned on election night, they did not show us where the ballots were. I had kind of thought that what we would be able to do is look up there on that screen at the geofencing and see the ballot boxes where they were in transit. But the device is not on the ballot boxes, and it's not suitable for the ballot boxes. So this contract is a lease. We do not own the Fleet Ups, and you never do own the Fleet Ups. The contract price next year is going to be over $47,000. This first year had a promotional period where you didn't pay the monthly rental of $9 per unit. It also had a promotional monthly service from $19 per unit to $15. That's a monthly service that you incur 12 months a year. We used those devices for 3 or 4 days. So we looked at AirTags. We did a couple of experiments with AirTags. I don't think AirTags is exactly the right technology for us. I don't know that it's strong enough. We went up to Top of the World or Kearney, and AirTags aren't going to give us that information. I want to know where the ballots are. So we've looked at other tracking devices, and they're far more, they're going to be far more effective because we can put them on the ballot boxes, and they're going to be substantially less expensive. Plus, we can own them. And I have HAVA funds to purchase these devices. I don't know why it would be, I would prefer to own them. Plus, they don't have a monthly contract, so I don't have to pay for 12 months service. If I'm only using them, if I have 5 elections, I'm only turning that service on for those 5 elections. So when they're sitting in the warehouse, we're not paying for their service.
So you're saying you're not against GPS, you're just against this particular system?
That's correct. This just wasn't right for elections needs.
But you don't have another one ready to roll out.
I have a demo that's on its way, and there are so many of them. If you've looked, there are a number of different kinds of tracking devices. I want one that has satellite, also uses cell. I want to be able to pull it up on an app, and I want to be able to pull it up on a computer, and that it has geofencing. So we are looking at vendors. I don't need a GPS tracker right at the moment. I don't have an election.
Mr. Chair, question. And just to be clear, so the recorder goes at teams, the bipartisan teams, go out and pick up ballots from the early ballot boxes. Now, they have GPS trackers on those, and they're using Fleet Up, is that correct? And you're not advocating for that side to change, only for your side the night of is what we're discussing.
Yes, I'm not advocating. The Fleet Up is perfect for the recorder's office. So the recorder's office has a cloth or a bag inside of a wire cage, and it's on a pull cart. So they put this Fleet Up on top of that. That Fleet Up is perfect. It's on the ballots. They can see it going from the satellite offices or the drop boxes into the van, and then they can see where the van goes. It creates a wonderful chain of custody for the recorder's office. But it doesn't do that for me.
Supervisor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Roll, you said something in the very beginning of your presentation, and that was in reference to the procurement of this need for the county. So, I mean, typically we would ask for requests for proposals from multiple companies or anybody that can meet the needs that we're looking for. Then we grade it, look at it, and come to some kind of a conclusion of who we think might be able to provide the service we're looking for. Are you indicating we haven't done that with this product? And is there a chance, is there time to go through that process? Because I think that is really the most efficient way. That's my personal opinion. May not necessarily be. But anyway, that's my question.
Yeah, I think that we do have time to do an RFP. And this was not done through an RFP. And I can only speculate. I think that we have HAVA funds. We received a HAVA grant for tracking security devices.
Yeah. Well,
so I'm not sure if they thought maybe they didn't have to go through procurement if they were going to use grant funds. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I absolutely do want to do that.
We can talk to finance and management about that, because I do believe it's a policy. At certain dollar levels, we have this policy that we go through that procedure. I think that might be something that would be very beneficial in establishing what system we're going to finally end up using. And so anyway.
So we're going to be voting up or down on this in a little bit, but there's nothing in place. So I would like, when we do come to that vote, explained exactly. Said I don't want to be uncovered. So when we do come to the vote on this item, please explain the vote very carefully of what we'll be voting on, and maybe we can do that after we hear from the public. Okay, Mr. Kavanaugh.
I think Mr. McClure was queued up next, so why don't you go ahead?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kavanaugh. But so, again, back to clarity. So the item that you're trying, the reason the Fleet Up doesn't work on the ballot boxes for night of is because it's a big strap-on cable that goes on, and there's no way to attach that to the ballot box. That's correct. Yes.
It's got a magnet on it.
Great, yeah, and so does my refrigerator magnet. So, okay, and I can get my grocery list. It's great, and my grandkids' pictures. But okay, so it magnetizes on there. But you're looking at a product that can be placed inside the ballot box, up inside, or on however it goes, probably inside,
And that can't
and then sealed with the 2 seals on the back. Is that correct? And
That's
the padlock. There's 2 seals on the ballot box, just to correct an earlier statement.
That's right.
And that would work for the night of ballots.
Yes.
And we would be using the Fleet Up service for the recorder's office, who is a totally different operation for picking up early ballots. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I was looking at the contract. These end in, the contract's up. One is up in September 23. It was a 12-month that started in 22, another 12-month that started in October of 22. So there were no extensions. These are expiring anyway. Is that right?
They have an auto renew clause.
Okay. All right. And so if they didn't auto renew and we kept them till October, we're going to pay out $11,500 or something on this. And then if we kept them through the end of the contract period.
I calculated that to be $14,900.
Okay, so we're talking $3,000 difference or so, if we just kept them. And then the other thing I noticed, it says if we don't do this by the 15th of June, the deal's off. It says, this is so that they're received by Fleet Up on or before June 15th. Have we already returned the devices?
Yes.
But again, they don't work on the ballot boxes because it's a refrigerator magnet, essentially.
That's how it would work on the ballot boxes. And they haven't been doing anything but sitting in their boxes since shortly after the election. We have no need for those GPS trackers at this point.
Thank you.
Okay.
So my pause is, where does that leave us? Maybe Mr. Voltmer could answer. Then we are committed to canceling it because they've already been returned?
Which is my reason to explain the vote of what can we do here.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Perhaps this is an appropriate time, if there are some legal questions, to adjourn to an executive session to discuss those, what kind of legal options that may be available to you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to go into exec session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We're in executive session. To do some explaining. Get some explaining to do.
Mr. Chairman, before we start, I just want to make sure we do have Supervisor Goodman on the line.
Supervisor Goodman?
I'm present. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, maybe a little bit of more detail and history might be appropriate for you to understand, the situation that's before you. These devices were purchased in September 15th, 115 of them at that time. I could find no record that was done via a procurement process, and it's different than what the recorder's office has done, mainly because of the volume and the dollar amount. Under our procurement process, if something is under a certain threshold dollar level, you only need to do telephone quotes, or you don't need to do any quotes if it's under $5,000. If it's between 5 and 10, you do certain type of quotes, telephone, and document the file. Above 10, you do something different. And if it gets above that, you then go into the full-blown procurement process, which is you put something on the street and you get vendors to respond to that. I could not find a record that was done. Now, my suspicion is that, because of the haste of everything that was going on, and the fact that these were already being used over in the recorder's office, there was an assumption that it could be just tagged onto that. That was an incorrect assumption by whoever made it. So I think going forward, what needs to be done is a procurement needs to be done. We, in legal, looked at the contract and analyzed it. And why do I believe there was no procurement done on this? Because one of the things that we tend to advocate that we don't like is, one, auto renewal clauses that don't have a significant time to get out of that. And number two, a choice of law clause. Choice of law clause is, if you're going to dispute this, where's that case going to be? This contract has a choice of law clause for California. So if we wanted to litigate this, you're going to California to do that. You can't move it here. They would protest that. You couldn't do it. And we work with procurement really strongly to try to get those vendors to change that choice of law clause. 95 to 99% of the time, we're very successful in it. In those occasions that it doesn't happen, we tend to bring that to the board, and we explain that that's a business risk now. You can sign it, you can execute it, and not have an Arizona clause, but it's a business risk because I'm not licensed in California. You're going to hire a California attorney or someone to go ahead and litigate this. So we began negotiations back in April with the vendor, trying to resolve whether, number one, could we modify the contract so that, we don't have to pay for the service during the time it's not being used. No, they would not agree to that. You sign a contract and you get this, you can get out of it, but you got to exercise your 30 days notice. Well, again, we were going to be having these devices sit on the shelves and continue to pay for them up to at least, I would say, August 15th, when you could terminate the first 115, and then September 15th, when you could terminate the next 50. And again, if we don't, they automatically renew for the same price, for an increased price, because they gave, I think as the director explained, they gave an introductory offer. But that was the 1 year, and it escalates after that. So it was going to be approximately $47,000. So we negotiated down with the vendor's attorney, I should say, because the minute we sent the letter over there trying to explore options such as, renegotiating the contract, seeing if there's a different contract that we could move to that you pay for when you need them type of thing. The minute we sent that over there, we got a letter back, probably an email back within a short time from their attorneys. They had already turned it over to their counsel. They didn't want to deal with it. So at the end, we negotiated what we thought was a fair deal at 11.5, which was still saving the county money. However, the vendor wanted to make sure that these units were not damaged. That they're still good, because if they were, they wanted more money. They wanted an additional cost. So in order to kind of assuage that fear, we directed that these be sent back to make sure that we affirmed they're hardly been used. They're sitting on the shelf. They're not damaged, but they wanted them back, and so that's why these were sent back. Now, the choice of law clause, is also a problem because, as I said, we couldn't find the actual procurement. That was signed, that invoice that came in was signed by an election worker. I'm sure under Virginia's direction, because Virginia started the email train of trying to explore Fleet Up, because she had been familiar with them over in the elections department before. So under California law, that employee is responsible for that contract as far as they're concerned. They have a specific choice in California that they can go after that employee, whoever executed and signed the contract. Not the Board of Supervisors. They could also name them, but they could go after that employee directly. And so that was another factor that we considered when we decided, look, this is a good deal for us. Well, we get out of litigation. We don't have to go to California to litigate. We're saving the county some dollars, and we still have plenty of time to get a replacement. And maybe this didn't come out completely. The next time that when we were analyzing this, the next time that you really need to have a GPS device for the election is going to be in March of 24. We do have some small elections coming up, this November, but those are mail only. Those are all mail ballots. So you really don't have any need for them until March. Now, what you may want to consider, depending on how you want to vote on this item, is including a direction to staff to go through to initiate a full procurement process to get a replacement, and to make sure that vendor, whoever it is in place no later than pick a date, January 1, March 1, February 1, but a time period if you want. But I think that could be part of this motion if you decide to go forward. Any questions? I think I've covered all of my points.
One quick question, Mr. Keller. Why is this item on the agenda today?
Thank you. The reason it's on the agenda because we just finished up the negotiations and got their signed signature. They wanted this returned to them by June 15th. We explained to them, can't do that. We need to get this on the board. The board needs to be officially, canceling this contract because we don't want to have any allegation by them that, geez, the individual who canceled this contract didn't have authority. Just like, they tried to say the individual who exercised this does have authority. So they wanted this by June 15th. We told them the first available date that we could get it on was going to be today. And actually, we worked with the clerk's office to ask them to put it on for us and make sure that we could make this deadline. And they were waiting for the execution of this to be mailed back to them, or emailed back to them, I should say.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
And Chris, would you say that this is a result of cleaning up some of our processes in elections?
I would say it's, doing due diligence that you've directed your staff to do as to, improve things going forward. I mean, I can't speak for the director, but, they're reviewing all their other policies and procedures and equipment and so forth, whether it's the type of trucks we use to deliver the devices, whether it's we're renting or whether you're using fleet. A lot of things are still being explored. So I would say yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further discussion before I open it up? And because a lot of people have waited to comment on this.
I have one question.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman. So just to clarify, Chris, I think in Arizona, even though the government has a contract, we can still cancel it. If we have a 2-year contract, under Arizona law, a government can cancel a contract in 30 or 90 days. Is that right?
That's normally correct. The one caveat you'd have to always consider, because everyone always thinks that, the government can cancel a contract. That's a 10-year contract anytime they want. Most of the time, yes. Sometimes if you build into that contract, certain triggers, you can't, without it necessarily affecting your bond rating. Right. If we're talking a $500,000 contract and you want to cancel it early, that may be because, depending on how the funds were procured and so forth. So I always caution, if you take that route to cancel something early by your statutory authority, sometimes, depending on what the value of that contract is, it may be something that you have to now disclose whenever you're doing any more bond financing.
Thank you. Another question for Ms. Roll. Thank you. It's your goal to replace this with a unit that works better for your purposes. Is that right?
That's right.
And the unit that you're going to look for has a geofencing, so you can tell perhaps if someone leaves the roadway, if they stop for more than a minute at a traffic light, if they stop at the McDonald's. Those criteria and others, if you could state them, if you know them, are going to be placed in the RFP that's forthcoming, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So we're going to replace this before the next physical ballot movement, which is in March of next year. Is that right?
March 19th.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I would hope sooner than later. Why let it linger? Go ahead, Mr. Volkmer.
Sure, I apologize. Ken Volkmer, County Attorney. Your Honor, I'll give you that. Your Honor. Ms. Lewis, our recorder, reached out, and she said she's concerned that there's the appearance that the entire fleet up was not followed through procurement, and the recorder's office did something wrong. With your permission, I'd like to just correct that understanding. I see you're nodding in the affirmative. So the recorder's office there's no procurement issue with Fleet Up and the recorder's office using it. It falls under that threshold, so their use of it is still going forward. It was absolutely appropriate. The recorder's office did not do anything inappropriate, and there's just this talk about procurement. Procurement's only required when it gets above a threshold. The recorder's use falls below that threshold, so completely on the up and up. There are no concerns about the validity of that contract. There's no violation of law, policy, or anything else. This is only with respect to the added-on Fleet Up that we're discussing that was used specifically for the Elections Department. Thank you.
Okay, we have a lot of people that want to speak. Perhaps with the information that they've heard, they may want to change what they were initially going to speak about. So first up, we have Earl Dorr.
Hi, Earl Dorr, District 2 Chair. I really don't have anything to change. I think that she made that perfectly clear that they were looking for alternatives. They want to test them, and I understand RFPs. Now, the recorder's office, I saw those used. I saw how they came in, they picked up the ballots, they put that tracker on there, and they brought them back. And again, that's another use of a device that's going to let you know those are the same ballots that left there and they got here. And that was all my concern was. Again, I know that you guys, because I wrote a fairly couple of memos to you, and that you have done a lot of changes, and Jerry's done a lot. The director, Ms. Roll, has done a lot of things, and they're putting a policy and procedure manual in place. And after talking again to the ES&S guy yesterday, I'm pretty confident in looking at testing that they did. So anyway, that's what I'm hearing. I like seeing where it's going. So okay. That's it.
Beverly Goldstein.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Chair and Supervisors. Beverly Goldstein, Queen Creek, District 2. Obviously, those of us who had the opportunity to be here this morning before the executive session and after the executive session had an opportunity to get informed about exactly the whole issue and not aspects of the issue. I guess I cannot read my testimony because it is no longer relevant based on everything I learned, but this is my request. My request is that those of us who really want safe and secure elections want GPS used during the elections. And this seemed to us at the time that all of a sudden something that we counted on was going away in 5 seconds, and there was no plan to replace it. Now, there is no plan to yet replace it, although we understand that it's in the works. I'm not one to say we should spend county money to keep things on a shelf that we don't need to use until the beginning of next year, but I am one to say that I would like to see by a motion or a firm vote of our supervisors that we will not go into an election cycle in 2024 without firm contracts for GPS. In the elections section, we have all been notified that the recorder section is okay, that we do not move to elections without a definite procured, purchased, or leased GPS system that's going to meet our needs. So I'm here to ask you, if it's not appropriate at this meeting because that resolution may need to be submitted sooner. I don't know all the procedures that are used here, but we do not want elections and giving up our GPS. We were way ahead of most precincts in the state and most precincts in the country, and we want to remain ahead in that area. And thank you for letting me speak this morning.
Okay. Colin Gribble.
Good morning. Colin Gribble, District 4, City of Maricopa. my questions have been answered. So,
Okay, thank you. Clara Jean Davis.
My name is Clara Jean Davis, District 2. I really filled out a card and said I didn't wish to speak, but I would just like you to know that I think that we've been railroaded into this, and with the information that's given today, I just feel like that we as citizens of Pinal County haven't really had the chance to really be able to look into this. And I just want to say that we don't want to be Maricopa County. We want safe elections, and we want to be able to trust our officials. Thank you.
Grace Contreras.
Good morning, everyone. I'm usually a very quiet person.
Let us know where you're from.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm from Maricopa County. I am a PCRC. I'm a precinct committee man from the city of Maricopa. Anyway, I'm usually a very quiet, observant person. A lot of the things that I hear today, though, I'm very bothered by it, and I've remained silent for far too long. One of the things that's bothering me right now is we keep talking about the cost of this program. From what I see, and I've been observing this for a long time, nobody has any problem with spending money frivolously on things that absolutely do not impact us as far as our elections go. But now that we're spending so much money for these certain tracking systems, it becomes a problem, and we need to start pinching pennies. Well, I'm sorry. I don't like that idea that we have to track money to make our elections safer. I think we need to maybe spend even a little bit more. We need to do more research on it. We need to be informed from the very beginning to the very end. I want to know who determined, who made the final decision, who discussed the implementation of ESNS, why, and did you guys have buy-in? I don't remember anybody discussing it with us. Everybody works for it. You guys work for us, not for anybody else. We're the ones that voted you in, and we can take you out. And I don't mean that in a violent way. I'm saying step down. But I want to see results, and I want them to be positive, and I want them to make our elections safer. And if we have to spend a little bit more money, take it from another pot of money where we don't have to spend it frivolously on things that are not going to impact our elections. Stay focused on our elections right now, because I don't care what anybody else says, our election was stolen. I worked it. I was one of the ones that went around in Maricopa County and collected affidavits, people that signed things that they saw that were willing to go to jail under penalty of perjury. Horrible things that they saw, that they witnessed. And it really broke my heart that we'd never fixed it. And here we are again. Please, think this through thoroughly. Think about America, our nation that I love, and I'm sure many of us here love. I don't want it to sink any further, but we're at the tipping point. We're about to lose our country. Let's fix our elections. Thank you very much.
John Shepard. Yeah. No more clapping.
John Shepard, District 4, Maricopa. Well, a lot has changed. It's kind of different issue now, but the concern that remains with me, I understand, and I comment Jerry, about trying to save costs, and make the process better. I think that's great. The concern I have is this seem to come from left field. It's hitting us kind of last minute. It's kind of hard to understand what's going on. So all I'm looking for is some kind of a reassurance that we are going to continue to have GPS for our next election, and that it's going to be a secure election. I don't know if there is a process that the board has for that, if there's going to be a publication, or if we're going to have a chance to comment again or rebut if it goes the wrong way. For example, if the election is going to be less secure. Thank you very much.
Marion Ewing.
Hi, Chairman, Supervisors. My name's Marion Ewing. I live in Pinal County. I'm District 1. I'm the captain. I just want to say I was raised that you never quit a job until you have another one. What's going on right now is totally wrong. You just don't get rid of our GPSs before you already have something that you're going to replace it with. Right now, our elections are forefront of our entire country. We have to make sure people have trust in our elections, and this seems to be, hopefully they had the good ideas in doing this, but it doesn't come across with the rest of us that that's what they're doing. Thank you.
Nancy Darafield.
I'm Nancy Deerfield. I'm a PC with District 1 in Saddlebrook Ranch. And I'm just going to second what Marion just said. We're here just to support and make sure that our elections have integrity.
Okay. Phyllis Pettijohn.
Good morning. Thank you for letting me speak. I came today because of the added portion of the agenda to cancel the GPS contract. However, I have learned the boxes have already been returned prematurely, so it's rather a moot point at this juncture. Both my husband and I worked at the polls in Pinal County, and we saw some discrepancies and reported them. We're very concerned about how unsecure the ballot boxes were, and to find out we have no way of following the chain of custody alarms us greatly. And I'd like this Board of Supervisors to think very seriously about how we can ensure the integrity of each and every legal vote. Thank you for your time.
Would anyone else like to address the board?
Belinda Rodriguez, PCRC Chair, Gold Canyon again. All I can say is, wow. All the things that Ms. Roll shared with you today regarding the GPS tracking devices were not shared with us yesterday. We asked questions. She never, ever disclosed that she had already returned the tracking devices. She clearly told us yesterday that there was no replacement strategy. She's got some thoughts, but I don't think there is a replacement strategy yet. Why are the marked ballot boxes not returned with the cages we asked, and the ballots that are unmarked are as important as the marked ballots? She stated that it was because there was no room for the cages for those ballot boxes that were marked with the marked ballots to be put into the cage. I said, we're building a huge facility. surely we'll have the room for those used and unused ballot boxes to fit in the cage, and I'll be returned the same night with the same GPS tracking system. Mr. Keller's explanation is very thorough. Thank you for that. However, the question still remains, why were these GPS devices returned without it even being presented, discussed? You all looked as surprised as we were that they had already been returned. Why is that happening? Why are those decisions being made by the elections director without consulting you all? That's a huge issue. And if someone doesn't have the ability to recognize that, then we've got a bigger problem. With regard to the email that Mr. Goodman referenced earlier, I, as the Republican Party chair, was given a 24-hour notice to participate in that hand count exercise. Yet the Democratic Party chair was able to have sufficient notice to attend. It took me three emails between Jerry and I to get a date, a time, and a location for me to round up volunteers. I think we have a bigger issue. If you want your voters to be reassured that we are going to have a safe election without compromising our integrity, we need to do something different. I see a lot of problems here. I could go on, but 3 minutes is all I get. So, again, I've sent you all an email. My apologies, I did not send it to Ms. Roll. When I sent it to you, I have now forwarded it to her so that she can see it as well. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I'll close. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, other members of the Board of Supervisors. My name is Stephen Cohen. I'm a resident of Casa Grande, and forgive my ignorance, you can tell me what district I belong to. I just wanted to say this. I've been hearing endlessly about election issues, and I don't care whether the people involved are Republicans or Democrats or Independents or Martians. It doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that we're spending public official time on an issue that is, for the most part, a distraction. And I don't mean to offend anybody when I say that. The real issues we face are policy issues. I look at Attorney Volker, criminal justice. We heard a speaker before about energy. Think of the other issues that should be on our agenda for debate and discussion and concern. Education, water, the environment, housing. The list goes on. And here we are going down this rabbit hole endlessly of how an election is run. That's why we hire people to do it. Was there a mistake perhaps in hiring in the past and someone didn't do a good job? Absolutely, it would seem. Having said that, okay, you put things in place to make things better, and you go on and you do the business of the people. The business of the people is not debating elections, it's dealing with all these other issues that are of concern, okay? And so I would just ask that we not go down the rabbit hole endlessly, that we focus instead on the issues of substance. And I thank you for your time.
Anyone else?
I don't think there are any other issues to discuss except our election. If we don't get our elections figured out and we protect our United States right to elections and expect integrity, not one other issue that I can think of is of any importance at all. None. So we better get this right. We've made all the mistakes that we should be allowed to. Or maybe we don't even deserve to have true, safe elections because we're not responsible enough to handle them. So I think we better get it discussed and taken care of. And I'm sorry. Vicki McLaughlin, District Chair for District 5, Apache Junction. Thank you, Board of Supervisors and Mr. Chairman.
Nope. No applause, please. Next.
Jack Mattachoni and District 5. Love you, Vicki. One thing I got to say is that, there's a flag right there. I served under it. I fought under it, and it included the right to vote, included the right for me to speak. There's a whole lot of things that have included, and that all comes down to elections. We're all seeing it. I'm living it. I'm watching it. I'm watching a two-tier justice system. I do not like what I see. I know a lot of people like me don't like it either. What I think that this gentleman just mentioned to me is some of the problem. The most important thing we have...
Jack, move back from the microphone.
Okay, I'm sorry. The most important... I get really mad when I hear this stuff. But anyway, the most important thing we have is elections. I don't care about this rest of the stuff. If we don't have elections, we don't even have a government. We don't have the United States again. It's done. Okay? And I'm not happy with what I'm seeing in Pinal County. We're making national news. There's no excuse for it. You guys are better than that. You guys are good at what you do. Be leaders. Fix this thing. I don't want to see, be honest with you, I'm a strong believer in doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results with Albert Einstein. We have seen elections over and over again screw up. It's time to change it. Get rid of the machines. Start putting some people to work and count these votes and make it right.
Anyone else?
Kind of go this way. Is this all right?
Yes.
So I'm Doug Stonerock. I live outside the boundaries of Casa Grande, but I'm in Pinal County, kind of over by the fairgrounds. So I'm not in the city. We just moved down here, my wife and I, about 3 months ago. So we were from Tempe. So I've seen Maricopa in the elections. And I have to agree with the last fellow and the lady before. The only thing that sets America apart is our elections. That's it. The people make the decisions. If we want to have everybody else and forget about that and just make it like a show, okay. Otherwise, we have to make the elections work and we have to have faith in them. It's trouble, and it's going to get bad. So wherever we can do as individuals, me and you, to help get security in the elections so we know that we as Americans, this is what sets us apart from everybody else. We decide, the people, via elections. That's it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I think that's everybody. Any more discussion among the board? Then I will ask for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve item H with the following amendments. Number one, that the GPS tracking device procurement RFP will be developed and open for bid no later than July 21st, 2023. Number two, that a contract be executed with a vendor for GPS tracking devices no later than January 1, 2024. Number three, that the Board of Supervisors be updated in executive session concerning the procurement process, which is required to remain confidential. Have I covered it?
I would second.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, and that carries. And we did get in there the all-important that we must have a replacement in a timely manner.
And Chairman, if we could just confirm that that aye was a late aye in favor
Yeah, I heard unanimous.
Okay.
Yes.
And Mr. Chairman, I think our rules allow us to explain our votes.
Yes, not at the time of the vote, but afterwards, yes.
So it would be appropriate to do so.
Yes.
No, we've never done this before. So essentially, Phyllis Pettyjohn summarized it well in saying that the devices are already gone. We don't have much of an option here. But I'm confident that we are going to replace these items, perhaps with items that work better than the ones we had, that they'll be geo-fenced, they'll be time-tracked, and all those things that we talked about earlier. So I hope we have allayed some fears and concerns that we're going to keep on top of this. So that's all I have to say.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
This may be more of a question for staff, but as the motion had the procurement process in there, but we can be updated as step to step as it goes forward. You can tell us, yeah, we've published it. It is in the newspaper. So if direct staff to maybe keep us posted in that way for the public to follow the process as we're moving forward. The details, I understand, can't be done, but the steps can be announced as they happen.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Miller is absolutely correct. And in fact, those could possibly be even updates that the county manager could give in his report that this solicitation has hit the street. We expect responses to be back at X date. We'll be evaluating those, and we hope to present it before the board for consideration at Y date.
Yeah, and we received 3 responses, or 1 response, or 100 responses, whatever it is. Thank you.
Okay. We still have a full meeting ahead of us. Okay. We're up to Steve Miller with what is going on with the state legislature.
They're out for recess.
Okay.
Okay.
But as Mayor Florence said, we did have the ADOT meeting, and there were a lot in attendance. So they are still working for us, even though we're...
Yeah, and I thought that, I'm glad she pointed that out, that we had great attendance by the electeds to visit with our ADOT representatives.
Okay. Presentation of certificates of service for employees 20 and 25 years. Leo Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have the privilege to honor 2 employees today. One could not be present, so we wanted to thank and honor Richard Murrieta from Public Works, who served with us for 20 years. So thank you, Richard, and congratulations. And then we do have an employee who was able to be here in person today, Ms. Cood, who goes by TC, has been with the county attorney's office for 25 years as a legal secretary and an administrative manager. Mr. Volkmar.
Come on up with me, Tanya. Absolutely. I want to first thank this board and the county manager for giving us the opportunity to bring our employees up. Actually, some of you have been on this board longer, but prior to this year, this was not a common practice. We maybe would acknowledge them, but we didn't get to bring them up, embarrass them just a little bit, but really recognize them for the service that they provide. TC has been an institution. She's been through at least 4 county attorneys. She has been, a steadfast champion of victims and victims' rights. The reality is her job nobody knows about unless you've been a victim or you've been in the system, because she's in charge of our entire notification department. So that means every time there's a hearing, every time there's a change, every time something happens, the way victims find out is by TC and her team. Her whole team's here supporting her, but they are just steadfast in their support of victims, making sure that they're aware of what's going on, fielding calls, and they end up having to be a jack of all trades or a Jill of all trades, because it's not like they just get to mail it out and that's it. They have to take difficult calls. They have to help people negotiate and navigate this very difficult system, and she does it behind the scenes very quietly. She's also a native. She's lived here forever. Her kids go to school here. I mean, she's really she's what is a Pinal County employee, somebody who's dedicated their life to serving others, and I just appreciate the opportunity to recognize her, and I'd ask everybody to maybe give her a round of applause and come take a picture. No? She indicated she did not want to say anything.
There we go. Actually, okay, let me get somebody from here over to here. There we go. All right, and boy, that's a lot of people. 3, 2, and again, happy, 3, 2, 1. There we go. All right.
Okay, this is a new segment where every supervisor will have a chance to do some announcements or what's going on in their district that they think that the residents may want to know. I believe Mr. McClure has something small.
Yes. Let's see, Arizona City, we've got the library that's getting ready to open next month. They just completed construction. The furniture's moving in. That's pretty exciting. Sunland Gin Road in Arizona City has been completely redone, and it's about to finish up with landscaping. There's an FAC, a Family Advocacy Center, going in Oracle. They start construction this next month, and it should be a few months after that they'll be able to open up. That's pretty exciting for them. I can't think of anything right off the top of my head.
Supervisor Goodman, did you have anything?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, on the 27th and the 29th, we're going to be holding two town hall meetings, and the purpose of these is to bring to the attention of the public in the Santan Valley area the survey that was done a few months ago. We have a local individual that is actually, we're pretty fortunate to have her in the area to moderate, but she has a tremendous background, and she'll be there to assist us and help us. She actually works for ASU. Cynthia has a lot of extensive background in government, so it's going to be interactive. So I would like to invite the public to be there. Then we also have the Public Works that'll be working with our library, and they're going to be bringing some heavy equipment. The dates on that, I'm a little bit unclear, but if you look at our website, we'll have that, or even on the Public Works. It'd be a good opportunity for our young kids to come and interact with our Public Works and even get up on one of them road graders, which is something that I've always wanted to do anyway myself. So I'll be a young, old kid there at that Public Works and the library. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and I have a couple, and this has been a long time happening, but clear back in June of 2019, there was a fire in the Superstitions, and it burned a lot of the vegetation. We then, in September of 2019, there was a tremendous downpour, and Fish Creek Hill on Highway 88 washed out, and it's been closed ever since. This is a state highway, and if anybody that's ever driven that, they know how beautiful it is and what it means to tourism and law enforcement. For instance, you can't get to Apache Lake from here. You got to go all the way around the globe, and Apache Lake Marina closed because of this. They now have the road open all the way to Fish Creek Hill from both sides. So way back in 2020 or 2021, we started a coalition to raise attention to this, and it's been gaining steam. We now have ADOT to the table. We've got 3 different congressmen. Eli Crane, Gozar, and Biggs have all worked on it. We have a lot of citizens that have been working on it and making ourselves heard. There's a billboard that was put up that says "Fix the Dam" with this DAM road, and a direct phone number to the governor, and they have heard us. And how important is this? Was it 2 years ago, Yellowstone, the road washed out. They had it fixed within a week. Well, this is our Yellowstone, if anybody that's ever been up there, and it means so much. So we are making work on that. There's a DCR has been completed. They have 3 different solutions. We just need to find the money now, and we are getting closer on that. The other thing I want to bring up is very important to not only District 5, but the whole county, and that is Resolution Copper. Everybody's aware of this project, and as of right now, it's completely on hold from Washington, D.C. They retracted the FEIS, and there's been 10 years and millions of dollars put into this, and it means so much to the state. I mean, we want to use our own copper here. The whole community of Superior is relying on this to come back in a bright way. So we've started a letter writing campaign on that to Homer Wilkes and Tom Vilsack, who is the Secretary of Agriculture. And I know this is recorded, so you can replay this. So I will say, if you want to write a letter in support of getting Resolution Copper open, you would write it to Homer.Wilkes, WILKES, 2@USDA.gov. And that is my report on District 5. And we'll hand that off now to the County Manager's report, Leo Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if I could just expound on the impact of Resolution Copper locally and statewide and really for the country and the world. I do have one graphic that has some of the highlights of the economic impact that operation will bring to our state and to the local area. You can see there 3,700 jobs. You can see the annual economic impact in growing the local economy, how much activity will be occurring in the hundreds of millions and in the billions of dollars. So we do have that be attached, or if anybody wants it, we can send that to you, as long as any other information that you want about Resolution Copper. And then I'd like to segue into, I think, something that was rather remarkable that Mr. Keller and I were both able to attend yesterday, as well as our Economic Development Director, James Smith, and our Workforce Development Director, Joel Millman. So, Sasha, I don't know if you had, I could run through just a couple of pictures. I'm not Kevin, so it was just me on a spur of the moment taking these with my cell phone. I got it from my seat. But this is a visit from LG Energy Solutions and getting into the weeds now with their human resources people. And they're letting us know what their plans are, and they're letting us know what the need for the workers are going to be. The operators, the technicians, the engineers, they're letting us know how many they're going to need and what kind of skills and experience that they're going to want these people to come with and to be able to develop. And so in this room, and what's remarkable about this is it's one of the first times regionally that all of these different players have come together to work toward meeting a large employer's needs. We're talking 2,800 plus 900, 3,700 direct employees. We have the Arizona Manufacturing Institute that's run out of the Maricopa College District, and this particular facility is at Mesa Community College. What you can't see on the other side of it are there's windows, and it goes to a lot of the equipment. You'll see some pictures of it. But we have them that they develop an automated industrial technology program, and that program really can be used statewide, and it's an effort for all the community colleges, as well as it gets integrated into our high school programs, both EVIT and CAVIT, which both function in Pinal County. And as a matter of fact, the site that LG's on is in EVIT's jurisdiction. But everybody is coming together, building these programs in, and incorporating the needs of the new technology of this company into these AIT programs. So both of them were there. Of course, CAC was there, and CAC is where we're going to be building the Workforce Training Center. That's going to have a lot of these elements into it, and which will be a cutting edge for the battery industry. J.O. Combs, school superintendent, was there. Queen Creek Unified School Superintendent was there. So we had many partners coming together for one movement. Obviously, if you're the company, you don't want to be trying to work with all these different entities and getting confused. So Joel Millman is going to be the person that all of this is going to be managed through to help everybody in the system develop and meet these programs for our kids and for our college students and for the employer, and he'll help manage that system. So it's quite the feat and quite a big thing for the county. This is a picture of the program leader talking to LG's HR folks and explaining some of the equipment and trainings that will occur in these institutes and in these programs. Next slide. So they go through everything. Just to give an example, they go through the main three power sources, hydraulic, pneumatic, and electric motor, and they go through not only how these students learn how to do this kind of by hand, if you want to call it that, manually, so that they understand what the computer software is also doing. They can troubleshoot. They can put case studies in here where computer programs will mess the system up, and then they'll go through a systematic way to solve these problems. So it's really a good program, and it's something that we want to build further and emulate more at our college up at Apache Junction, where our training center is going to be. Next slide. So this is the project leader for LG Energy Solutions that we've been working with now over the last couple of years. Chris Keller was in this picture, but he stepped out. But one of the fascinating things is when he's looking at this piece of equipment, he was remarking how this is very similar to what would be in our Workforce Training Center, very similar to what their employees will be trained on as their electrodes are rolled up and put into the cylinders. And so a lot of the needs that they have will be able to deliver in its manufacturing processes and equipment that we're somewhat familiar with, of course, with some customizations for their particular processes. And then just staying on the topic of economic development as a whole, we had Pinal Partnership along with Blossom Digital, who is a branch of the Casa Grande Dispatch, all wanted to work together to request an economic development kind of update and promotional video for the county. So we worked with all of them to produce this, and this is the video that they came up with. Welcome to Pinal County. Our county has transformed from an economy that was once primarily agriculture and mining to one that is dynamic and diversified. In recent years, Pinal County has announced projects that will create over 13,500 direct jobs and result in investment of up to $10.2 billion, covering green energy manufacturing of electric vehicles, batteries, enhanced copper mining, as well as projects in the semiconductor supply chain, building materials, and consumer goods industries. The county's prime location between California, Texas, and Mexico, and its strategic position at the crossroads of major freeways, railroads, and airports ensures great access to key markets and supply chains. Bolstered by plentiful, affordable land, Pinal County sits between two of the nation's premier public universities. The county invests in innovative workforce development partnerships with the state, our communities, and Central Arizona College. Pinal County and its cities and towns are led by business-friendly governments who continue to invest in key public infrastructure to support economic growth. Let's hear now from some of our cities and towns throughout Pinal County.
The city of Apache Junction is fast becoming the emerging epicenter of the East Valley. Why, you ask? With thousands of acres of land already zoned for employment and commercial uses located between SR 24 and US Highway 60, we are ready for new business and development. Our geographic location in the Phoenix metro area gives future business decision makers the power to access a large, skilled talent pool. The quality of life that our residents experience with all of the available outdoor amenities is unparalleled.
I want to talk to you about the iPath complex. It is a 2,700-acre mega site. It's an industrial complex that currently houses Nicola and Procter & Gamble. It's rail served. It's 3 miles from I-10, and there's a lot of activity out there. The Coolidge Airport is moving along. We've added a number of businesses, E-Cube, Bright Industries. We have AIM. They've hired a number of people out at the Coolidge Airport.
The city of Eloy is becoming a manufacturing and a logistic hub for Pinal County. Here in Eloy, we're located between I-10 and Interstate 8. We're close to between two major metropolitan areas, Phoenix and Tucson. We have prime location for development. At our locations, we have truck stops that will be helping all our needs with the logistics side and distribution that's coming to our community. Not just in our community, but for here in the Pinal County area. Some of our newest industries that have come into our community is Vex Science. Owens Corning, and National Gypsum. We have so much going on within the city of Eloy.
Hi, great things are happening here in Florence. Eldorado Holdings recently purchased over 4,000 acres to build a new master plan community near Anthem, and over 700 residential lots will be completed throughout town this year. This growth has spurred new revitalization efforts. The Irish Cowboy Pub and Birds and Bones Barbecue both have revitalized buildings in our historic downtown. Also, Florence Copper is gearing up for a full-scale, environmentally friendly copper production, bringing 250 jobs to Florence and Pinal County and critical resources to Arizona's fastest-growing industries. And Florence is proud to be a hotspot for live music and regional events like Country Thunder and, of course, Junior Prada, the oldest junior rodeo in the United States.
Maricopa is a vibrant and growing community with so much to offer. With its warm climate, excellent schools, and diverse cultural scene, it's a great place to call home. Not only are we constantly ranked as one of the safest cities in the state, we're also becoming a lightning rod for some of the most exciting development opportunities in the country, including a world-class surf park and luxury motorsports club. So why not join the thousands of people who have already made the move and discover all that Maricopa has to offer?
Over the past few years, Casa Grande has become a center for innovation and technology, attracting not only the premier luxury electric vehicle company Lucid Motors, but many international companies that support the semiconductor industry. Additionally, Casa Grande is a key distribution location and hub for many large industries like Kohler, Walmart, Tractor Supply, Daisy Brands, Frito-Lay, and Abbott, just to name a few. Casa Grande has thousands of acres of flat, ready-to-be-developed industrial zoned land at a much lower cost than the Phoenix metropolitan area. Add to this the excellent connectivity to Interstate 8, Interstate 10, and future Interstate 11, and not to mention the main line of the Union Pacific Railroad. It is easy to understand why so many companies are choosing to locate in Casa Grande.
Exciting things are happening here in Queen Creek. Just last year, the Arizona Department of Transportation opened the long-awaited extension of the State Route 24 all the way to Ironwood Road. Having this connectivity to the region is so important, as well as access to 1.8 million workers. Having a strong workforce for the town is so important as we continue to work with the county and with the state in this important employment corridor. In our northeast area of town is our state trust land, with the recent announcement of LG Energy Solution and a $5.5 billion investment. We are so excited about the opportunity and the possibility in this region and what it brings for our economic corridor.
Eastern Pinal County is home to several world-class copper mines. These copper mines help to fuel not only America's economy, but the world's economy. We're also home to world-class tourism destinations, such as the Boyce-Thompson Arboretum, Biosphere 2, Arizona Zipline Adventures, and let's not forget our beloved Arizona Trail. Come out and have your own adventure here in Arizona's Copper Corridor, but also come and learn more about the natural resources here that are fueling America's economy.
Pinal County has developed into a key player in the global economy. We welcome you and hope you will consider joining us.
That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. That's a lot. Purchasing Division report. Talk louder.
There we go. All right.
There we go.
Try again. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, and members of the board. I'm Tiara Peterson, Purchasing Manager for Pinal County, and this is your purchasing report for June 21st, 2023. First, the board is requested to approve the following contract award, RFP 232627 for WIOA One Stop Operator, We recommend Chicanas por la Casa, Inc. be awarded a contract beginning July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024 with 4 optional 1-year extensions. This contract will be used by the Economic and Workforce Development Department. Next, the board is requested to approve the following contract amendments. RFP 203026 for Public Defense Service Attorney Services. We recommend approval of an amendment to exercise the optional extension period beginning July 1st, 2023 with the following suppliers. Herman Alcantar of Alcantar Law Firm, Ardeen Fox of Fox Law Group PC, Bobby Falduto, Attorney at Law, Catherine L. Gree, Attorney at Law, Shelley M. Wallace, Attorney at Law, Christina Griffin Carter of Carter Law, PLLC, Elizabeth Ryan Reuter of Cooper & Reuter, Stephen Zopp of Zopp Law Firm, PLLC, David Mangan Law, PLLC, Elizabeth M. Hale of E.M. Hale Law, PLC, James Q. Buchanan, Attorney at Law, PLLC, Jeffrey B. Cloud of J. Cloud Law, PLLC, Jennifer Hill, Attorney at Law, John G. Schaus, Attorney at Law, Joy Riddle of Riddle Law Firm, PLLC, Anthony L. Kenny of Kenny Law, LLC, Kyle Hobson of Hobson Legal Consulting, PLLC, Law Office of Ann M. Williams, the Law Office of Daniel Thulin, LLC, Law Office of Jamie Sparks, Law Offices of Janelle A. McEachern, Law Offices of J.R. Wallace, PLC, Law Office of Michael Villarreal, Law Office of Nicole L. Severson, PC, Law Office of Rebecca S. Bell, Law Office of Rosemary Gordon Panuco, Law Office of Samantha Sue Elledge, PLLC, Paul D. Green, Attorney Mediator, LLC, Robert Precht, Attorney at Law, Jolanta Rosinski of Rosinski Law Firm, LLC, Ian N. Service of Service Law Group, James Sislowski of the Sislowski Law Firm, Morgan P. Alexander of the Alexander Law Offices, and Tyler Michael William Allen of Allen Law, PLLC, DBA, Queen Creek Law Firm, Cody N. Weegent of Weegent Law Offices, and Megan Weegent of Weegent Law Offices, Catherine A. Winkley of Winkley Law Firm, and Stephen Zachary of the Zachary Law Firm. There are 2 optional extensions remaining, and this contract is used by the Public Defense Services Office. RFP 182524 for WIOA Adult and Dislocated Worker and Rapid Response Service Provider. We recommend approval of Amendment Number 7 to exercise the optional extension period beginning July 1st, 2023 with Arbor ENT LLC DBA Equus Workforce Solutions. This contract is used by Arizona at Work Pinal County through the Economic and Workforce Development Department. RFP 220126 for Title 1B WIOA Youth Program Provider. We recommend approval of Amendment Number 2 to exercise the optional extension period from July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024 with Pinal County Community College District. This contract is used by the Economic and Workforce Development Department. RFP 161222 for banking services. We recommend approval of Amendment Number 4 to extend the contract from June 30th, 2023 through July 5th, 2023 with Wells Fargo Bank, N.A. This contract is used by the Treasurer's Office. Next, the Board is hereby notified of the following cooperative purchases made. PO 249507 with CCS Presentation Systems in the amount of $190,452.30 for EOC technology equipment used by Public Works. And finally, the Board is requested to approve the following cooperative purchase, requisition number 167352 with Ellison Mills Construction, LLC in the amount of $436,714.81 for roadway improvements in Arizona City used by the Public Works Department. And that concludes your Purchasing Division report for June 21st, 2023.
Any questions or comments? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a comment. I wouldn't normally thank a vendor for taking money from the county, but I think it's important to realize that these attorneys are working in defense for small amounts of money compared to the work they do, and we ought to be thankful that these folks are stepping up to help indigent folks and other folks who need defense services. So my kudos to them for just being willing.
Okay. If nothing else, I'll ask for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the purchasing report as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that carries. Aye. That carries.
Thank you.
We'll slow down and wait for him to aye later next time. Consent agenda, and thank goodness we have item H behind us. We're going to pull item number AU. And does anyone else want to pull anything before we make a motion?
BO.
Anyone from the public as well?
BO.
BO.
Right.
Anything else? Then I'll ask for a motion on everything but AU and BO.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve consent items A through BO minus AU and BO. I'm chuckling. I know you guys are chuckling at that too. I'm having a hard time with that.
Is there a second?
I'm sorry, Chairman, just for clarity, if we can just also include item H. I do know that we've already taken action on it, but I don't want it to be included in the action that was just taken either.
I'll amend my motion. I move that we approve items A through BO minus item H, AU, and BO.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? And the ayes have it. Okay, item number AU, Mr. Volkmer.
Thank you, Chair. Ken Volkmer, Pinal County Attorney. I asked that AU be pulled. I'm still asking the board to go forward with it, but there is a correction that needs to be made. On the last line of the brief description of the agenda item, it says there is no impact on the general fund. That is not accurate. If you look approximately 3 lines above it, it says there's a 25% match requirement. We don't believe there's a notice issue. The match requirement is there, but it just should not have said there's no impact to the general fund. There is a 25% impact, which is about $48,000 impact to the general fund. But we would ask that you still approve it as it is the acceptance of a grant.
Any discussion? I'll ask for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve AU and strike the last portion which states that there is no impact on the general fund.
I would second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. Item number BO.
No snickering.
Mr. Chairman, I think this one, a citizen asked what it was, and I said I could not comment. I don't know what is available publicly, but I would ask Mr. Volkmer to explain anything that is publicly available or what this might entail.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Kavanaugh, let me field that one for Mr. Volkmer because I've been a little bit closer to this item than he has, and although I will admit I'm not even that close to it. Mary Ellen and one of our attorneys were in a mediation yesterday with the Arizona Civil Rights Department regarding an employee that had a claim, and as a result, we put this item on there with the hope that they would be able to mediate a resolution. It's my understanding that late last night by 6:30-ish or so, they did get to a resolution, and they are memorializing that, and it may already be done in a settlement agreement to approve. This item was discussed with the board in an executive session, I believe, last meeting, at which you gave us parameters and authority to try to see if this matter could be resolved at mediation. I'm happy to report that we did resolve it within those parameters. I don't have the specific amounts yet, although I just know that it was resolved within the parameters given by the board. But the settlement agreement will be available once it is completed and signed by the chairman. And I think that, I don't know if it's made its way to the clerk's office or not yet. No.
All right, thank you.
Any discussion? Ask for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve item BO as presented.
I would second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. I will now convene the board meeting, and we'll go into Desert Vista Sanitary District Board meeting. Which I don't recall us ever doing one of these. So
consent item.
Do we have a motion on the consent agenda?
Mr. Chair, I move we approve item A on the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
And the ayes have that. So nothing was pulled, right? That was,
We have a public hearing on the
but public hearings on the budget.
budget.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the board. We're here today to discuss Desert Vista Sanitary District's tentative budget for fiscal year 23-24.
You are?
I am Bridget Alwyn with the Office of Budget Management. Thank you. And I think the budget is attached. We're good.
Is there any discussion or questions? This is a public hearing. Would anyone like to comment on this item? Hearing and seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the item number 2 of the Pinal County, let's see, what is this? Oh, the Desert Vista Sanitary District budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the ayes have that. Let's get back to our regular scheduled meeting. Presentation and discussion of the Pinal County Fairgrounds Raceway regarding a noise ordinance.
Good morning, Chair, Board. Kent Taylor, Director of Open Space and Trails. Staff was asked to put together a presentation for the board related to the fairgrounds operations, specifically the racetrack and its relationship to the noise ordinance. So I've got a brief presentation for you this morning. We also have subject matter experts in-house from legal and the community development, and then a representative from the Central Arizona Fair Association, or CAFA, who's our nonprofit partner operating the fairgrounds.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I think we have some folks from nearby as well that
So-
may want to speak.
Do you want to open that up now?
No, I would ask for the presentation first.
Yeah, after the presentation, we do have some folks that want to speak.
So a little history on the fairgrounds. 1957 is the approximate date for the first fair at the existing site. In 2011, the county did enter a lease agreement with the Central Arizona Fair Association, or as we refer to as CAFA. That agreement lease includes a separate management agreement to operate the facility on behalf of the county. Current conditions, what you typically see at the fairgrounds, annual visitation of about 64,000, and the events hosted in most of these you're familiar with: County Fair, Bluegrass Festival, Gourd Festival, and motorsport races. All right, Natasha, my clicker's not working, Natasha. No. We need to buy some batteries. Use the mouse. That one.
We're going to have a GPS put in that clicker.
Oh, wow.
That's what we're waiting on.
It doesn't like me, Natasha. There it goes. There it goes. Okay. All right, so some of the racetrack history. 1961 was the approximate start of horse racing at the facility, at the existing site that now hosts the auto racetrack. In 1969, that horse racetrack was converted to an auto racetrack. Originally, it was a 1/4 mile dirt track, and it was updated in 2012 to a 3/8 mile track. And back in September of 2022, both the CAFA board and yourselves, the Board of Supervisors, approved a lease with a new racetrack operator. So the racetrack overview: typical racing season, they run typically September through November, take a month off for the month of December, get back, and goes January through June. There's typically races held on 2 Saturdays a month, and there's a couple of months that may have both a Friday and Saturday race. And there's typically 4 to 5 practice days throughout the year, which those typically occur on the day before the race, a Saturday race on a Friday. And the approximate attendance since January is about 30,000 attendees. As far as the zoning of the property, so the fairgrounds property did go through a county-initiated rezoning process back in 2007. That process included neighborhood meetings, a planning and zoning commission meeting and recommendations, and then board of supervisor meeting and approval. And that included stipulations with the cases, and those were attached to the agenda item. There's stipulations on both the PAD, which is PZPD 00506. That includes 15 stipulations, including a stipulation on hours of operation for the racetrack and muffler use for the cars at the racetrack. And then the SUP was 12 additional stipulations. The noise ordinance, and we did include this as part of the packet and the agenda postings. The very last section of the noise ordinance does have an exemption for motorized sporting events, as outlined there. And recently, there have been both CAFA and the racetrack operator and PCSO have taken noise level readings at the site, and they fall below that 120 decibel limit that's outlined in the ordinance. And as far as enforcement goes, so anything that has to do with the enforcement of the stipulations would fall to the Community Development Department through their code enforcement folks. And then a noise ordinance is actually enforced by PCSO. I think that's it for that's it. Thank you. Since I can't get this technology to work today. That's it for my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions if I can, or point you in the right direction.
If there's no questions from us,
I have one.
Go ahead.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm just curious, and I don't know where this comes in, the noise ordinance not being in community development, but PCSO, what was the rationale or what was the reasoning on that? Does anybody have any idea how or why that happened?
I do not. Maybe legal does, but I do not.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not positive of this, so I believe at the time that it was adopted, the noise meter resided with the sheriff's office in case they would get complaints of noisy neighbors next door, and then you had to go out and investigate. So they had a noise meter, and I believe it just carried over. Frankly, that was before my time, so this is, anecdotal at best.
Yeah, and it was certainly before I got here, but there wouldn't be an issue if that was moved over to community development, would it?
I think we'd have to explore the options. I think it's possible, yes. The question would be, if there is a violation, what that violation is. Is it a civil violation or is it a criminal violation of some kind? And that might have been why it was always over in PCSO.
Okay. I'll leave it at that for now.
okay. So we have Ray Edwards that would like to speak or possibly ask questions.
Good afternoon, I think it is almost. I live out in Cascaron by the racetrack. We had a recent newspaper report come out, and my daughter called us very scared. Dad, you should read these, and blah, blah, blah. And, the main questions were, if these old farts knew that racetrack was over there, why did they buy? And since they're there and they don't like the noise, why don't they move? Well, I'm just here to let you guys know that what we are, the people that are there. 20 years ago, when I was 62, and some of you guys ain't too far from that, my wife and I sold everything and we hit the road full-time RVing. Well, you go out there about a year later and you're going, wait a minute, this is costing us $100 a day. We got to find some place to sit for 5 or 6 months a year. And we tried Florida and Texas, and we ended up back in Arizona, and we located Sunscape RV Resort. So we went in there and bought a lot, and it was everything we ever expected on the road full-time RVing, and it's a different lifestyle altogether. We were up 5:30 in the morning having coffee with 10 guys or people up there. They had a hot tub, a pool, a pickleball court, shuffleboard court, place to have shows, pool tables, workout rooms, a golf course, one golf cart away, about a mile. And so you get into golfing 4 or 5 days a week, you bowled on Tuesdays, you played cards, you went to dinners with all these people and everything. And the funny thing happens, they're all like you. They're all RVers, full-time, most of them. And they all have the same problems. One of the problems is when you're in your 60s, you're pretty good health, you got everything going for you. All of a sudden, you get into those 70s, and one partner or the other starts having health problems. In my case, it was my wife. Well, you have to start looking around. I had a Freightliner truck, a Teton fifth wheel, the motorcycle on the back, and Gloria finally couldn't get in and out of that truck. She couldn't live in the fifth wheel anymore. It was up and down. So we bought a park model. We didn't want to leave all our friends we'd made. We'd been there 10 winters. And the park model got to be where she couldn't get around in that either, or up and down. Well, the same guy that built Sunscape RV Resort built Sunscape Estates right down the road. And these are double-wide mobile homes. They're ground set. So you either have to move into town and start all over making friends and stuff to get help, because we all help each other over there, or move down to Sunscape Estates, get to ground level. And 70% of the people that live down there ended up the same position as I did. You have to get to ground level. You don't want to lose all your friends. You don't want to lose all your activities and such. People you go out to eat with and help each other with, they're all down there, or they went back home to Michigan or wherever. So I just wanted you to know this is the seniors that are in there. We're not there basically because that's exactly where we wanted to be in the end, but we're trying to age out in our home. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. So this was discussion only. So Steve, Kent, anything else?
I don't have anything unless there's questions. We do have a CAFA representative here if you want to talk to her.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, let me give some background on how and why we ended up here. Mr. Edwards had reached out to me a couple of times about the sound, and then he invited myself and the CAF chairman, president,
executive director,
executive director, and we went out there on a Saturday evening and heard the sounds of the race, and it is there, and I forget the highest reading was like an 80. But really, all I could offer to Mr. Edwards is an opportunity to speak before the Board of Supervisors, because I think that the contracts and the situation that has procured out there with this whole operation is pretty binding, and I don't think that there's much that the Board of Supervisors can do. But I offered Mr. Edwards the opportunity to speak before the Board of Supervisors, and that's why I requested this to be on the agenda, and that's really all I have for it.
Okay. Mr. Kavanaugh.
Question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the noise ordinance, it states that number 14, motorized sporting events which have successfully completed either site plan or commercial site plan review process shall not exceed 120 decibel level at the property line of the event. Has that been checked? Does anybody know?
We're going to hear from CAFA representative.
Yeah. As far as the county goes, Supervisor, I'm not sure we've done like a site plan in that zoning process back from 2007, but it's something we can check.
And I can just, Misty Todd, Director of Pinal County Fairgrounds. from CAFA. I can just speak mostly regarding decibel levels. Since we had started hearing from Mr. Edwards regarding the noise at the racetrack last year, we have been taking decibel readings from the racetrack and also at the fairgrounds during parties to make sure that we are in compliance of this, to be proactive about this. We obviously do not have what you would probably, I guess you would consider the official decibel reader that PCSO has. We have some that we've purchased, handheld devices. Also, I think you might know that you can also get a decibel reader on your phone. And so in the instances that we have had complaints, and then also in just spot checking the racetrack, both myself with our decibel reader at the fairgrounds and the racetrack promoter have checked those readings at different places on the property. And you're correct. I think the highest one we ever got was right around 80. When Supervisor Miller and I were at Mr. Edwards' house, I had use of the one on my phone, again, registered the same kind of findings. So it's been consistently with the report that we have from PCSO when they went out and did one at the request of Mr. Edwards, and the readings we get from our handheld and phones are all within the same range of each other. So.
I'll just add, I think one of the readings was actually from the stands, or right next to the stands, that did not exceed.
It was in the 90s,
it was in the
right
90s,
at the track.
But it did not exceed the height. I mean, they're right there, right where the stands were. So anyway.
Okay, any more questions? Kent?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up on Supervisor Kavanaugh. So Brent Billingsley has reminded me that as part of the SUP process, that would have included a review of the site plan.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think that's it on this item.
I'll just thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing Mr. Edwards to come before
I've
the board.
had a request for a 10-minute recess. Let's go outside.
Was it the dog that asked the request?
Okay. Call us back into session. And we are on number 11, comprehensive plan amendment regarding energy.
Sorry. Good afternoon once again, Chairman, Vice Chair, and board members. Sangeeta Devkar, Senior Planner with Planning Division, presenting this year's county-initiated item for a major comprehensive plan amendment. So just to give you a perspective of the schedule for 2023 major comprehensive plan amendments, the work session, today is the first work session. The schedule starts. May end is when we expect all the applicants to be submitting. And this begins the first, I would say, hearing with the major comp plan amendments. June 9th is the start date of 60 days agency review, and July 20th would be the work session with the P&Z for all of the items. August 9 would be the work session with Board of Supervisors once again with all of the proposals. And this is the first one which for this year, which is county initiated. It is an application to request an update of the renewable energy sources section for Chapter 7, and which is the environmental stewardship section of energy subsection renewable energy sources of the 2019 Pinal County Comprehensive Plan document. So this proposal basically is expanding the renewable energy sources to include additional categories besides solar. This also updates the goals, objectives, and policies under the same Chapter 7, and updating the Appendix D, the glossary for additional items in the vocabulary of the Comprehensive Plan document. So the purpose is providing a comprehensive list of the renewable energy sources, promoting quality safety benefits to Pinal County residents, and expanding the toolbox and providing options for renewable energy sources to create diversity within this category. Some of the renewable energy sources that have been listed. The first one is the only one that has been addressed till now in our comprehensive plan document. Our focus had, at that point in time, been solar energy. This proposal requests to include the following energy sources that have been listed, which is bioenergy, geothermal energy, hydrogen and hydropower, and wind energy besides the solar energy that is already there. Oops. So solar energy, we have been seeing examples of this with photovoltaics and solar farms. The second one, which is the concentrating solar thermal power, is another form of renewable energy sources and a process to harness solar energy. Bioenergy is derived from organic materials from biomass. Geothermal energy is heat harnessed from beneath the earth. Hydrogen is energy carrier produced from domestic sources, natural gas, solar, wind, geothermal, biomass, or from processes, which is electrolysis, biological, water splitting, steam, methane reforming. Hydropower, usually we associate those with large-scale, projects like Hoover Dam. However, with technological advances and researches, smaller facilities with micro turbines take advantage of water flows in municipal water facilities and irrigation ditches, and there have been a lot of research in that with projects that have been coming up. Wind energy is another form, which is harnessing power from wind through wind turbines, collecting and converting kinetic energy into electricity. The last portion is updating the Appendix G glossary to include the new terms that are introduced in this renewable energy section. And those are the ones which are highlighted in the packet, have been shown in green. So basically, just to give an overview, this is, we are adding the renewable energy sources section, and this is more of an addition to more tools in our toolbox at this point in time. It's a text amendment to an existing comprehensive plan document. I'm open for any questions if there are.
Mr. Kavanaugh.
I think the last time we had the opportunity to discuss wind energy, Supervisor Miller and I agreed that, it doesn't seem like a good fit for Pinal County, that we were considering wind not because it's a great place for it, but because a company had received, and from my recollection, a grant or had a project in the works or something, so that was the justification for wind. So it's, to me, not a good fit for Pinal County. I would be opposed, not just because it's inefficient, because of the blight, the places, the very few places that it could go would ruin our scenic, beautiful, well, on the eastern side of the county, and I'm trying to think of the mountain range, but and then adding to that, I see there's biomass burning. You mentioned studies. It's my recollection that the burning biomass actually creates more carbon in the near century than clean burning hydrocarbons. So I would oppose biomass as it pollutes more than like our clean burning natural gas generators that are in our county. So those are my comments.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Just for energy's sake, I mean, we had the gentleman earlier talking about nuclear power, and I think, should we have that involved in here too as a future provider?
Just to give you a perspective, this chapter is, and the subsection that I'm talking about is just renewable energy sources based on research that I have done, and under Department of Energy, from where I have derived information, nuclear energy does not fall under renewable sources, and therefore.
Fair enough. Okay, thank you.
Steve.
But can it be added to this comprehensive plan? Maybe not under renewable, but can it be added to the plan? So
Sure.
it is a viable.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. So I think
Sure,
that's,
that I will definitely add into the section where it is considered clean and sustainable, and we will definitely try and see that we can add it into the text amendments for this.
I think we want to show that's a viable option from Pinal County.
Sure.
Through the wind, though, I oppose these windmills entirely. I think that you have another section on the wildlife. Well, these windmills, we have probably some of the most dominant bird flights through the state of Arizona. It would not be a good idea to be putting these things up because there's been a lot of data put out about how they do cause a lot of havoc with flights. And so I just don't see it as a fit for Pinal County, and I would just flat remove it and not allow it. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
So just one more comment. So to that point, I mean, I agree with both of you on the wind, but is it so that we have the ability to be able to discuss it, even if we're going to turn it down, say not that we're doing that, but this is just so that we have the talking points in the toolbox to be able to discuss it. Is that not correct?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, Mr. McClure. Last year, we had a staff-sponsored, a county-sponsored comp plan amendment with respect to wind energy. And what we heard resoundingly from both the Planning and Zoning Commission and from the board was there was no opposition in terms of having the tools in the toolbox and listing these individual things. But there was a concern with the last year's document seemed to be advocating for wind energy. So the direction that I gave to staff this year was to focus on a text amendment, giving us the tools in the toolbox to address them if they come up, understanding they're going to go through a process, but certainly not to have what we had last year, which was viewed as advocating for wind energy directly. Yes, so that's why we have the bushel basket and fairly minor edits to the document itself. That's correct.
Is that anything else? I mean, go ahead.
So my position is.
We have 1 second, Mike. We'll get to you.
So my position with particularly wind is it's out of the question. We shouldn't spend our time with a discussion. We shouldn't open ourselves up to it, and it shouldn't be in there.
Sure.
Okay. Supervisor Goodman.
Yeah, I would agree with that on wind, but this I heard something in regard to nuclear power. I think that should be another option that we ought to be looking at, or at least study it, and even have Mr. Goldsmith come back and speak about that.
Okay.
And specifically, there's conventional nuclear power, and then what Mr. Goldstein was talking about is liquid fluoride thorium reactors. So we may specifically mention that.
Sure.
I agree with that, and I think we need to be looking at all the options and kind of be the lead in some of this stuff here in the state of Arizona.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sangeeta, is that everything?
Yes, we do have another work session, and I will incorporate all those comments that you have made and present them again at the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's move on to the flood control work session item.
All right, well, good afternoon, Chairman, Supervisors. My name is Chris Wanamaker, County Engineer. I also have with me today Joshua Plum. He's an Assistant County Engineer, and he manages the day-to-day operations of flood control. So today I'd like to talk to you about the overview of the flood control district, what we do, what we don't do, and some of the kind of ins and outs of things, and Well, and I understand probably between you guys and lunch, so I'm going to try to go fairly quickly, but feel free to interject with questions at any time. So the countywide flood control district was formed under Arizona Revised Statute 48-3602, and we have a series of 3 ordinances that we use to do what we do. So we have our floodplain management ordinance, which was adopted in 2019, and we also administer our drainage ordinance, which is quite old actually, from 1998, and our stormwater ordinance. And believe it or not, all 3 of those are completely different things, even though they have, they're water related. So here on the screen is our district mission statement. This is something that staff and leadership put together about 15 years ago, and I believe it really encompasses what we are trying to do as a district and what we're mandated to do. And really it comes down to protecting life and property from flooding through regulating development and projects. And we also do outreach and help with response as well by supporting emergency management. So our district funding currently is about $4.6 million. It is a secondary property tax at a rate of 16.93 cents per $100 of assessed value. It's countywide, obviously excluding state lands, excluding federal, no tribal, and whatnot. We also get funding from various sources through grant programs, whether it's Army Corps of Engineers, Federal Emergency Management Agency, National Resources Conservation Service. And then we get a little bit of revenue from our permit and review fees, which are actually fairly small. So at the previous board session, our Angeline Woods did talk a little bit about the tax rate. So you probably saw this slide before, and you can see for Pinal County, we're right there just left of the middle, or less than average as far as the rate goes. And I think it's been that way for quite a while. And you can see quite the range in tax rates across the state. And it's quite interesting. Are there any specific questions about this? Okay. All right, so one question that we were asked last time by Supervisor Miller was about grant funding. So we added this slide. So over the last 5 years, the district has received 8 grants valued at more than $6.7 million. That's federal or state dollars, not counting our dollars. So this chart here shows all the different projects where we've received that funding. But of perhaps particular importance is when we have grants, we also have strings attached to it. And sometimes getting a grant can be quite challenging. There's a local match. The project has to be eligible, has to meet some specific criteria, which can sometimes be challenging to accommodate. And then, of course, there's cost increases over time, and you could have a project that may be viable at a certain time when you apply for the grant, but then years later when you get the money, perhaps now things have changed. And we'll talk a little bit more about that at a later slide.
I think Supervisor Miller wants to insert
Yes.
a question.
Just real quick, because I do want to make kind of a point. I think every one of these required some type of a matching fund. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And they can vary
It's
from 50% to 25% to whatever.
That is correct. So, for example, the Lower Santa Cruz River feasibility study, which is an Army Corps grant, was 50-50. So there was a $2.7 million investment from the Flood Control District Fund for that. But these 2 NRCS watershed plans was closer to about 90-10, so we had about 10%, at least at the time. Now, of course, there's been change orders and things that have happened since we initiated those projects, but they were initiated at about a 90-10.
And that's the point I wanted to kind of make with these grants. They're not, very rarely are they 100%, and we're always having to come up with dollars to execute them.
That is correct. Thank you, Supervisor. So a little bit about construction costs. I won't read all the numbers here, but we gathered some data from various sources. And, there's been an obvious increase in construction costs over the last few years, both due to inflation and supply chain disruptions. challenges with getting materials. In fact, there was a period of time where you just could not get concrete unless you wanted to pay an exorbitant amount of money for it. So you had to wait. So it affects all infrastructure because pretty much everything we build has concrete in some capacity, as an example. And then there's, of course, the labor challenges. And if desired, we can provide the source information for this on this slide. But labor challenges is also another thing that has resulted in cost increases. So this slide shows 3 different projects, two of which I mentioned at a previous board meeting about cost increases. And so you can see, for example, with our Sunland Road Bridge project, the original cost back in 2018 when we applied for our FEMA grant was $1.6 million. And then when we received our low bid a few months ago, it was $7.2 million. It was quite a shock to see that. Our El Camino Viejo Bridge replacement project, which is under construction right now, more than doubled in cost just in the short period of 2 years from the time we initiated that project to once we got that bid from the contractor. And then you can see there with Dirtwater Springs, which is another priority project for us. And so the current cost estimate is 5.9. We did put in the budget request that you'll see July 5th, $7 million, and that extra $1.1 million is just a pad to hopefully totally encompass the cost of that project. Now, by the way, that is a 50-50 cost share with the city of Apache Junction. Let's see here. So one thing I wanted to talk about is flood protection districts. And I don't know, some of you guys may be aware, there are actually 6 flood protection districts within our county. These are completely different than the countywide flood control district that we're talking about today. And these were created under a different state statute and typically for a specific purpose, to own, operate, and maintain a piece of infrastructure such as a dam or a levee or something like that. These types of flood protection districts can be dissolved and their assets can be turned over to the county. So on this slide, I got a map of the 6 flood protection districts across the county. So as an example, the red one there you see on the map, that is Magma Flood Control District. They call them Flood Control District, but again, it's a flood protection district. So they have this taxing area, which is shown in the red, and they use those funds to manage the Magma Dam. Some of these districts are more active than others. And so any resident that lives in one of these areas, on their tax bill, they're going to see a flood control district tax for Pinal County, and then they'll also see another tax for these districts. Now, we work with these districts sometimes on joint projects or studies. And like I said, some are more active than others. As an example, the one in yellow, that's the Maricopa Flood District, not to be confused with the Maricopa County Flood Control District, completely different. There's been some discussions with them about dissolving that district because I guess there's been some concerns about, hey, why am I being, quote, double taxed, if that's the way you want to look at it. But they have infrastructure there within the city that district maintains. So there's been some discussions about dissolving that now. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question just real quick on that?
Yeah, Supervisor Miller?
Yeah, thank you. Because this is the Santa Cruz area that kind of impacts all of those in that line. That's the path of that Santa Cruz. And how does that interact with these districts?
Yeah, that's correct. So and that's a great observation there. The Santa Cruz River runs right there through 4 of these districts. And so the infrastructure, say, there in the green, that's the Green Reservoir Flood Control District. They have a system of channels and levees that help to divert and control those flows from the Santa Cruz River. Now, as far as I know, that district, the funding that they get is very small, and so they basically do vegetation control. And so we are working with that district as an example on the Sunland Road project that I referenced earlier, because what we're trying to do with that infrastructure impacts them and some properties they own that they'll work with us to get that infrastructure built.
and you might get to some of this, and I'll just touch base on it, though. I hope that there's opportunity at some point that we might be able to use some of this as recharge programs as water comes down through them. And then I think maybe like you take the city of Maricopa, because of all the development that's been there, maybe they're mitigating some of their issues by the subdivisions being built. I don't know. I'm just kind of curious.
Chairman, Supervisor Miller, yeah, there's plenty of opportunity for that, and I'll go back to the Green Reservoir Flood District. They have some properties out there that we were looking at as a potential for a recharge facility that would also have a flood control function, and we'd done as part of our Greenwash watershed plan, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. We've done some preliminary work on exploring just that with those properties, and so we wanted to see if there is that opportunity to have a federal investment in something like that as well, because these are large, expensive projects. So, but it's definitely being looked at.
We can talk about that later.
Okay, a little bit about district programs. So floodplain management. Floodplain management is what we do every day. It's regulating development, issuing floodplain use permits. A floodplain use permit is intended to ensure that any development is reasonably safe from flooding, and that's the term they use, and that it will not cause an adverse impact to adjacent properties. We regulate development within the federally mapped floodplains, or we call them FEMA floodplains, and we also have local floodplains that we've mapped ourselves using engineering methods and studies. Should be important to note here that we also do permitting, floodplain permitting, for many of the communities, municipalities within the county. This is mostly the smaller ones like Eloy and Coolidge. We don't do permits for Casa Grande, Apache Junction, Florence, or Kearney. And actually, Maricopa last night at their council meeting, I don't know if they passed, I don't know if you heard, but they were considering passing their own floodplain ordinance. And if it did pass, it would be effective in 30 days, and they would effectively take over their own permitting. So I have yet to hear if that's passed or not, but let's see here. So a little bit more about permit review. Like I mentioned, we pretty much anything that is done in a floodplain, there's a review that goes on. Now, the good thing is, perhaps, let's see, skip ahead here. If there are no floodplain issues, then they're just given a clearance and they're on their way. The majority of the permits and stuff that we review do result in a clearance, and I do have more information on that in the next slide here. One of the big things we do is with subdivision reviews, if there's a floodplain involved, they have to go through a two-step process where they submit what's called a conditional letter of map revision, which is basically a proposal to revise the floodplain. Then it goes through review, goes to FEMA review at the federal level. Then they construct the improvements, and then they come back with an actual letter of map revision. One important thing to note here is when it comes to flood control solutions, our floodplain ordinance does state that any above grade flood control structures such as levees, dams, berms, what have you, do require prior approval from the board before they can go down that road. And we'll talk more about that later too. Here I've got a couple of graphs, charts here showing our reviews over the years. So on the left here, drainage report reviews. In orange is for subdivisions, and you can see how in 2010 we had only a handful, and then we went up over 160 in 2021, and we're down to just over 100 last year. That's quite a few still. It's one every 3 to 4 days over the course of the year. The blue ones there on the left side, that's for non-residential. So we're talking commercial, industrial, and other types of things. On the right, permit reviews. So last year we did about 4,200 permit reviews. 90% of those had no floodplain issues, so they were just issued a clearance. They're on their way. About 10% resulted in further review and then issuance of a actual floodplain use permit with specific requirements for that development. One thing that's important to note too is that Pinal County is part of the community rating system, which is a system that the federal government has to recognize floodplain management programs that go above and beyond the federal minimum. And we actually became a member in 2015, and we're currently at a Class 6 rating, which is, I think, is really good. And that results in a 20% discount on flood insurance for anybody in the unincorporated county who has insurance. So those residents are benefiting from our floodplain management program and paying 20% less on their flood insurance.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question real quick?
Yeah, this is the work session, so feel free to ask questions.
Mr. Wanamaker, can you back up one slide real quick?
Yes.
So floodplain clearance permit issuance, what is required to get a permit in a floodplain? Like, and because you say it goes through, it gets additional review, and then you give them a permit, but what do you have to do to the building?
Chairman, Supervisor McClure, great question. So typically, let's say we're talking about a house, for example, they're going to have to provide a plan to show that they're going to elevate the house above the floodplain elevation. We'll help them by providing them what that floodplain elevation is, whether it's a few inches above the ground or perhaps a few feet. They'll have to hire a surveyor to prepare what's called an elevation certificate. Have to submit that document to us, and if they can demonstrate with their plans that they will be elevated properly and they've got all the correct documentation, then at that point we can issue a permit. And then afterwards they'll have to return what we call a final elevation certificate, which is basically an as-built certification that they've elevated that home to the right elevation.
And so that brings me to my next piece, like Arizona City, where that 1 square mile is in the floodplain, and I think it was purple back there, where we've got homes that are 3 feet higher than their neighbors, and that creates issues for those people that get stuck between 2 homes like that. And so is there some piece of that in that permit that says, your drainage can't go sideways under the neighbor's yard, it has to drain out to the street, and ideally it drains away when it hits the street. It doesn't always happen, but there's some provision in there for that.
Supervisor McClure, that's a great question. So what the floodplain ordinance really is concerned about the elevation of the building and the protection of that new building. It doesn't necessarily get down to the details of on-lot drainage. That kind of does fall under the drainage ordinance criteria. So that's going to be one of the challenges I'm going to talk about later, that our drainage ordinance is very old. It's from 1998, and actually there's a lot of exemptions that we're working to close the loop on with the new drainage ordinance at some point in the future. So it doesn't get that detailed into the site drainage, like from the roof runoff.
The site plan, but that comes in play someplace.
With drainage ordinance.
Downstream, sure.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so going back to CRS here. So we're currently at class 6 rating, which again is very good. Okay, capital projects. So we do a lot of projects. So since 2008, we've invested more than $11 million, and actually that number is probably low because it doesn't count the projects we finished last year. And that's actual just construction dollars in the ground infrastructure that directly benefits residents and property owners. As was mentioned at a previous board meeting, we have 40 flood control projects in our 5-year plan with a value or cost estimate of $36 million. And then we also have 11 bridge projects, which is actually a different funding source, but there's $3.4 million planned for bridge expenditures in our 5-year plan. And then beyond the 5-year time horizon, we do have 19 additional projects at $82 million, and it's quite high there, but quite a few projects.
At collecting $4 million a year,
we're
a little short.
Supervisor, yeah, that's a great point, and that's why our 5-year plan does go well beyond. The list of projects goes well beyond 5 years, and it is a challenge, and that's why we've got to work towards whatever grant funding we can get. And you saw on that chart there, we have received funding from various agencies over the years, and we continue to do that. And there's actually a new grant program that I was just made aware of that the Army Corps of Engineers has that we're right now exploring to see if any of our existing projects would would be eligible under that, because that's really the only way we're going to be able to get a lot of these things done. These are big projects.
I don't want to go back to the slide, but I noticed when they looked at the rate on the flood in all the different counties, I mean, there were some that were 2-3 times what our rate is. I mean, is that just the policy of that county, or is it lack of private? I mean, we can only tax private land, and that's about 20% plus or minus of Pinal County, but we have to control the flooding of the entire county. So there's, I mean, it's almost impossible to really get a handle on it or really be proactive. I mean, we're totally reactive.
Yeah, thank you, Supervisor. Yeah, it is definitely a challenge, and I do have some in the later slides talking more about challenges with project costs. It is, yeah, and I think Santa Cruz County has the highest tax rate that I'm aware of, but they're a small county, and they've got some big challenges with the Santa Cruz River as it comes across the border from Mexico, and so they spend quite a bit of money dealing with that type of thing. And so with being a small county, they're going to have a higher rate to be able to bring in enough money to make a difference. So here's just a map showing kind of all the projects we have in our 5-year plan. I think it's important to note here that it's spread across the whole county. We want to try to cover all 5 districts, and we want to try to do projects within the municipalities as well, because that helps us capitalize on partnership opportunities where we can get more done with at least less of our money from our direct revenue. So those partnership opportunities is always a good way to improve efficiency. And also, again, the secondary property tax does cover those city boundaries. So a city resident will be paying a flood tax to the county. So we try really hard to spread these projects out across the whole county. Okay, studies. In addition to construction projects, we do a lot of studies too. And almost every construction project begins with some kind of study. So we've got drainage master plans that we're working on, water course master plans, and then watershed plans. And I know they sound very similar, but there are little differences. We meet different criteria depending on what we're trying to do or what program, in this case like watershed plans for NRCS. We have to meet their criteria in order for the resulting projects that come out of these plans to be eligible for federal money. So this map kind of shows the scale of these studies that we're working on. So the McClellan Wash Watercourse Master Plan, for example, that's a very large plan. The 2 plans shown in yellow, those are proposed for future. We have not done anything to initiate those at this time. It's just something that at some point we'd like to address because they are tributaries to that lower Santa Cruz River, which is just an area where we have a lot of flooding challenges.
Chris, if I may?
Yes.
And we can't get a grant unless we have one of these studies done. Is that a pretty true statement?
Supervisor, yes, and yeah, exactly. It's in order to get the grant funding to construct something, you have to have a study to support that first.
Demonstrating that.
So these studies, as an example, they'll go through a process of evaluating project alternatives. So you have a bunch of project ideas based on the hydrology and the hydraulics of the situation, where your flooding issues are, and then those projects will be evaluated and narrowed down to essentially a preferred alternative or a preferred series of projects that essentially work together. But you have to go through this study process in order to demonstrate to the federal government that you have a project that is the best project that you can do to solve that problem. So another program that we have is our alert system, which is our rain gauges or precipitation stream gauges across the county. So we have 47 of those across the county and 18 webcams, which webcams are something that we've recently done over the last few years. And the big thing with this program is it directly supports the National Weather Service forecasting operations. And so many of our stream gauges are tied directly into their system, and we collaborate with weather service people on getting those emergency notifications and forecasting, getting it tied to real data, real things that are happening on the ground, so we can have accurate warnings. We do have a 5-year plan for this program, and we're going to be updating it this coming calendar year, and that plan helps kind of direct where the next stream gauges are going to go, equipment upgrades, and various other things related to the program. So this map shows in the red dots are all the 47 stream and rain gauges across the county. We've tried to spread it out, get a good, dense network as much as we can. And then those webcams, again, also spread out. And you can see here on this slide, on the right is an example image from the webcam at McClellan Wash. So in one image, obviously, it's dry. In the other, it's the same location, same direction, but during flooding conditions. And so this helps give us basically live information about what's actually happening out there. We're not necessarily having to rely on a number or data showing up. And this is all public. This is all available on the county website. People can go on there and look at the data, look at the images. I believe these cameras update every hour, but we're able to adjust that, I believe, in specific situations if needed. So, okay, let's see here. And of course, when we build infrastructure, that also means we're going to have to maintain them. So as of right now, we have 7 detention basins across the county, 10 channels at 5.6 miles in length, 3 dams, which we actually recently decommissioned, and that project's wrapping up right now. And then there's 1 levee that we have inspection responsibility for, but we don't actually own it. Investigations and enforcement is another thing that we do. This map just shows more than 800 complaints that we've received since 2003. So when we get complaints, we typically go out, do an investigation, determine, is it a floodplain ordinance violation? Is it drainage ordinance? And then we try to get compliance. And we try to work with that property owner, get them through the permit process, and get it done correctly to address that problem. In a few cases, we've had to go in and actually remediate it ourselves and then charge the property owner. So we have that ability as well. So stormwater. So the stormwater program is to ensure compliance with ADQ and EPA stormwater regulations, also to help ensure that land developers obtain the necessary stormwater permits and that they adhere to their approved plans when they're doing construction activities. And then we also do education, outreach, and training as part of this program. Okay, land subsidence and earth fissures. This is another thing that we get involved with. So we partner with the ADWR on what they call the INSAR program, which is a program that uses satellites to measure ground movement. And I'll show an image of that in a moment. And, it's really interesting because you wouldn't necessarily think there's a correlation between that and flood control, but if we have lowering of the ground surface, that does change flood patterns. And there's plenty of evidence of that across the state. So it's actually pretty important to what we do. We also work with the Arizona Geological Survey on earth fissures, which are cracks that form in the ground due to groundwater withdrawal, and that does affect development as where you can put your house, or it may affect your subdivision layout, as an example. So we work with the Geological Survey on that. So this slide shows a couple images. So on the left is an image we might get from the satellite data that shows us land subsidence. And so this is near south of Apache Junction, actually, south of the industrial area. There in the middle is physical evidence of land subsidence. You can see that the well foundation there is floating above the ground. That's because the ground is lowered. And then on the right, of course, is the earth fissure, and we want to make sure that people aren't putting their houses on top of these things. So that's part of what we do. Okay, bridge inspection and management program. So another thing we do is we manage all the bridges in the county, mostly because Most bridges are over water, and most bridges that have problems due to hydraulic processes or processes related to water, such as erosion, scour, flooding, and whatnot. There's currently 155 bridges, I believe, across the county. And we work, these bridges are inspected by ADOT on our behalf so that we leverage their expertise, and then we go through and do projects to address any issues with these bridges.
Is a bridge the same as a culvert, or culverts all bridges?
Supervisor, great question. So the definition of a bridge is any structure that has a 20-foot span. So it could very well be a multi-barrel culvert, which some of those are.
Okay.
So, yes. All right. Challenges. This goes back to your earlier question, Supervisor Miller. Funding infrastructure is a challenge. A single local project that has any appreciable benefit could easily cost $2 million. So that basically means we can do 1 to 2 projects a year on our current revenue. That's without federal investment. However, we try to look at the possibility of doing regional scale projects or larger, more community type projects. And those, of course, cost goes up, typically in the $5 to $10 million range. But you get more, more cost benefit. You can have bigger bang for the buck, I guess. And then, as I mentioned earlier, grant programs are very competitive, limited in scope, and often have stringent criteria. I mentioned the 5-year plan here. And also, I guess I should clarify that the 5-year plan and these 19 projects beyond that do not even include the projects that were listed in the McClellan-Wash Watercourse Master Plan, which is a whole separate thing that we may come to the board with the presentation on that in the future. Okay, another challenge we have, and this goes back to Supervisor McClure's question, is single lot development. So most of the flooding and drainage problems that we have and complaints are related to single lot residential development. And these are residential developments that are not within subdivisions, not within master plan communities or anything like that. So there's current exemptions in the current drainage ordinance on these types of development. So it does make it really challenging to enforce or deal with certain issues. Now, we've tried to implement as many things as possible to try and address this, but really a new drainage ordinance is what we need to do. And that's something we are working on and have been for quite some time. And that'll also be coming to this board at some point in the future when it's ready. Another challenge we have is the accuracy of floodplain maps. Everyone wants to argue about the maps being wrong, and honestly, they may be right. Some of these maps are more than 40 years old, and they use 1970s technology and methods. And so, you could be out there and say, hey, this has never flooded. There's no evidence of it. And yet you might have it on the map that way. Doing a mapping study is quite expensive. And years ago, we used to do quite a few of them. But we've kind of moved away from that because of the costs and because we have other tools now to regulate flooding or development and address flooding that don't necessarily require us to go through a extensive, expensive mapping process. And also, when we talk about these maps, these are the FEMA maps, the federal government maps. So they should be doing that. Let's see here. Another challenge is, kind of mentioned this earlier, levees and dams or above grade structures. An important thing to note here is the Arizona County's insurance pool, which is our insurance provider, they will not insure, they've told us, any new above grade flood control structures. So if the county were to approve one or construct one, we would have no insurance protection for that. So we would have to address that through another carrier or some other policy. The challenge with these types of structures is there's high residual risk, and when a dam fails or a levee fails, it usually makes the news. As an example, in 2021, here in this county, there were 5 berm breaches or levee breaches. These were private structures, not owned by any agency. These were farmers' structures or perhaps structures that had been there for decades that failed during the 2021 monsoon. And when they fail, it's usually catastrophic. flood wave comes down and it creates a lot more damage than if the structure had never been there in the first place. So we've done a lot at our level, at the staff level, and with our plans and our policies and the things that we have in place to help curb this this type of approach to flood control. So the good news is we don't really see a lot of development coming in proposing this kind of stuff anymore because of how challenging it would be to do it. So that's all I have. If there's any other questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Any fishing reports for the Santa Cruz River?
I haven't heard any.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay.
All right.
I think that's it then. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Discussion of board members' requests for future agenda items. And Mr. Kavanaugh saw me in between a break, and you suggested what?
We should consider and discuss whether the data collected by the GPS units is stored in the United States or elsewhere. And perhaps we should include a requirement that the data for the GPS units are stored stateside so that, if necessary, a subpoena could be issued for those, or public records request or whatever, so that data is easily obtained. The second thing, I think Mr. Goodman has mentioned it in the past, that BOS members be provided a detailed summary of conversations between an individual Board of Supervisor member and a director or county management staff, so that all the Board of Supervisor members are fully updated on the happenings in the county. Sometimes we get information in a meeting, then it's a surprise to other board members. Well, we can't talk among ourselves more than two, so that might be a good idea. A third item would be scheduling a performance evaluation for the county manager and the criteria for that. Another item would be, Chris Wanamaker made me think of this, perhaps discussing the feasibility of a portable concrete manufacturing station. If that's the issue, aggregate's gone up, 50% or since 2017, but the price on these projects is sevenfold. So is it the aggregate? Is it the labor? And maybe we should consider that. And then finally, I've talked about it before, and as we get closer to a war with China, maybe we should consider looking at our emergency preparation reviews, whether we have a natural or human-caused catastrophe countywide, supply chain disruptions, food chain disruptions. How are we prepared to help our citizens survive in a catastrophic event for 30 to 45 days?
Are we looking for bunkers too? I mean, just
if they're available, yes.
To piggyback off of that, I would just say that going back to the GPS thing, that we have the future demonstration of the new GPS tracker system, and then we get RFP updates through executive sessions. I mean, we mentioned that earlier, but just to make it clear.
Mike Goodman, do you have anything?
No, I think those were pretty well. Those are good items that we need to be really looking at. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Well, that concludes our work items, but we actually already voted to go to exec, so we will now recess again and go back into executive session. Yep.
There we go. Okay. That's the one. Thanks.